So we have a quorum, so we'll start the April 5th meeting of the Architecture Board of Review. The first item on the agenda is public comment for anybody wishing to speak about an item that's not on the agenda. Please come forward. Seeing no one, I'll move to the approval of the minutes of the ABR meeting of March 22nd. Do I have a maker? Clay, second by?
I'll second it.
Paul. To approve those meeting minutes and
Madam Chair,
go ahead, Paul.
if we can start with the roll call. I had a question that I emailed. Was Gillian on, it says under members present, Gillian, has that been corrected? Oops.
Actually, that question was posed to Hyman Limon, supervisor, and he said to keep him on the agenda until the question of getting a second landscape architect
It's
is
not under
That's fine.
That's fine.
But he wasn't there, right? Is that your
That's
question?
he wasn't present, and so then that changes some of the number counts on when it was like 5-0 and 6-0.
So he can stay up here, just not under. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else prior to item number 1? Item number 1. Item 2. Item 3. Item 4. Item 5. Item 6. Item 7. And item 8. Nothing? Oh, go ahead.
Item 8, on number 1E, under the compatibility findings, I believe it's supposed to say the project design does not impact established public views of mountains. I think it's just a little typo there.
Okay. That's probably right. I wasn't here. All right, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I'm abstaining, so we have 3, 0, 1.
You think Mr. Moser will be abstaining too?
Yes, well,
I will be abstaining.
he's not here yet. He hasn't sat down. There we go. Okay, then we have, next on the agenda is the consent calendar for March 29th.
Need a motion?
We need a motion. Clay?
I'll second.
Paul seconded.
Yes, Madam Chair, the consent item calendar for Monday, March 29th, 2010. Item A, 130 South Hope Avenue, final approval as submitted. Item B, 2915 De La Vina Street, continued indefinitely to the staff hearing officer. Item C, 201 North Milpas, final approval with conditions. Item D, 2819 State Street, final approval with conditions. Items on consent were reviewed by Gary Mosel.
All right. So we have a first and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Consent calendar for April 5th today. Do I have a maker of that motion to approve those minutes?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Keith, seconded by Gary. Michelle?
Yes, consent agenda for Monday, today, April 5th, 2010. Item A, 222 Helena Avenue, final approval as noted. Item B, 1022 Calle de los Amigos, final approval as submitted. Item C, 409 Anacapa Street, final approval as noted. Items were reviewed by Clay Arell.
All right. All those in favor of the motion? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Announcements by staff, requests by applicants for continuances, et cetera, et cetera. we have any announcements?
I have one point of clarification that I actually want to bring before the board, but maybe we'll do that after the end of the regular agenda item and before the first discussion item. We'll carry through.
The only thing we have left is subcommittee reports, so, okay. Are there any subcommittee reports? Nope. You're up again.
Okay. So,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Clay.
Back to announcements. I just want a clarification. Gary, are we still doing the rotation on consent?
We are.
Okay. Because I was here today. It would have been you. I just showed up automatically. But
I thought the rotation happens in beginning of next month.
it doesn't matter to me.
well, it is
I just
a
don't
3-month
remember, that's why I'm
rotation,
asking.
So, yeah, Clay did January. No, because would it be even 3 months, 4 times a year?
Well, holy smokes.
So Gary will be here next
I'm not
Monday.
interested in smoking, but maybe we can. You want to go to next week? You're on for the next. I made it known before I left. Okay, so you on now on consent? Okay, cool.
Okay, Madam Chair, or Mr. Chair, we'd like to bring back before the board just for a clarification item. This is Cottage Hospital. Got approval some time ago, and I'll put these plans here in front of the board. You pass these down, actually. We just had a quick clarification question among staff. We wanted to get the board's opinion as to whether or not they recall the use of colored concrete. You'll see I have the keynotes item 12 highlighted. And so if you guys could look at that and give us any discussion, clarification on that item.
Commercial driveway. This was Oak Park Lane and Pueblo. Type.
What's the question?
I guess this is for.
This is
It
part
says
of the
only-
project at Cottage Hospital.
Oh yes.
And then they're going to propose to do where indicated the highlights.
Here.
Colored, concrete. I think there's an area in the middle identified key 12. And they're proposing to do Santa Barbara sandstone. Does the board recall when reviewing this project some time ago that looks right?
Okay, I mean. So just this little driveway entrance here. This little driveway entrance here. Construct colored concrete. Santa Barbara sandstone. Is that to match Santa Barbara sandstone?
Or is that
What's the reason for the question?
They were proposing that, so we just wanted to, it just seemed a little odd to Jaime, and we wanted to confirm whether or not that was indeed supposed to be the Santa Barbara sandstone at that location.
It's supposed to be a colored concrete, and the way I read it is the color is Santa Barbara sandstone. Is that the way you read it?
Light sand color, light brown.
That sounds correct from what you recall when you were reviewing the project, that you wanted that location to have the Santa Barbara sandstone?
No, the colored concrete.
Colored concrete.
It looks like they're proposing that the color should be Santa Barbara sandstone, is the way I read this note. So, but they're the applicants. What do they want? What did they say that color was, or did we not keep a chip of it?
I don't remember the project.
This was just actually brought to us by Public Works staff as a question to Jaime. So Jaime just asked that we bring it before you to see if you could recall whether that sounded correct when you guys were reviewing the project.
I guess, well, to begin with, Michelle, I have to say I'm having a little difficulty, as is Dawn and Paul, about exactly what the project was about. Like, where is this in I see it's Pueblo, Junipero, Oak Park Lane. I'm trying to figure out what this driveway goes into. Like, what does it go into? And
Is this the big hospital project?
Yeah.
This would be the
Castillo.
glassy project.
but where does the driveway go into? Like, what does it enter?
And that's the big entry there, the glassy blue. And that would be in the entryway right here. This is where the entryway would be.
But when they have like, isn't it like a two-part?
That was a curb right there, wasn't there?
This is just a one entrance, and this is just a pan entrance. And the other part of it is that I don't think we have ever done a driveway pan in Santa Barbara sandstone, so that couldn't be the interpretation. I don't think we've ever had that.
It's a colored concrete for the driveway pan.
Yeah, that's what it reads to me.
And the city was probably expecting normal gray concrete, and they're wondering why the applicant's going with a light tan or a buff when typical city standard detail is gray concrete.
Right.
I guess what we could say is we don't know enough about it memory-wise to respond. Because we didn't ask for that specifically.
Is this sidewalk tan? Santa Barbara Sand?
Mr. Chair, I just confirmed with Senior Planner Jaime Limon, and he just stated that he believes that that is a Planning Commission condition of approval, and he just wanted to make sure that the board is okay with that color and that location.
I think it seems kind of odd to put colored concrete in a driveway pan.
Well, Gary's point is that if the other sidewalks in the area are the same color, then it isn't odd.
Then it's just not odd.
But
Right.
if everything else is normal gray concrete, then yes, it is odd.
So what is it?
The adjacent surfaces matter, so we really can't give you an answer.
Let's see what the sidewalk color is.
I've been looking.
What's 13 manifold stone drain?
It doesn't say, as far as we can see yet, what the color of the sidewalk is. So
It's on the next page.
About colored sidewalk too, look.
Okay.
15 says construct approximately 536 linear feet of colored sidewalk, Santa Barbara sandstone. So the whole sidewalk is also Santa Barbara sandstone. And that's why they would have said, you know, if this is going to be gray here, then maybe we should, if this is going to be sandstone colored here, then maybe that should be sandstone color and make it uniform.
yeah,
That makes sense. You understand, Jaime? What we're reading here is it's not highlighted, but there's also, they're asking for colored sidewalk, a colored sidewalk, and in brackets Santa Barbara sandstone as possibly the color. And I could see where they would ask for the pan to be colored the same, so it matches instead of having dark asphalt road, gray pan, colored sidewalk. So it looks like it's fine the way it is worded here for a colored
That's
pan.
what we wanted confirmed,
Yeah.
because it seemed a little odd to
Yeah.
require also the driveway pans to be colored also. I could see consistency-wise, it would make sense. But I don't remember the board commenting on this condition of approval, and I wanted the board to be aware of it before you started asking questions about after it got poured, why it was that color.
Right.
So this is your opportunity to check in with Public Works if you're okay with this condition.
I don't have an issue. I think that if it was approved for all colored concrete sidewalks in this particular location, then I think
Oh,
it's
with
a
that?
good decision to go to the pan.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. So, are we finished with D? And E? Okay. And so we're at discussion item number 1. Coast Village Road Business Association of the draft proposed semi-rural commercial overlay district architectural guidelines and development standards.
Good afternoon,
Hi.
ABR members. My name is Betty Weiss, City Planner, and I've been working with a number of people in the community and with the County of Santa Barbara related to the city's review of projects in the Coast Village Road area. We provided you with a brief memo and then attachments for today's discussion. The two things basically that we're discussing is an effort that the Coast Village Business Association undertook in the community to hold community discussions and forums about how the uniqueness of the Coast Village Road contributes to that area, and design considerations and
get a copy
concerns
of
about development pressure they had regarding some pending projects out there. That was one of the reasons why they held meetings in May of 2008.
Okay, I'm getting one.
Also, the city staff, we've been talking with community members throughout the city areas, including Coast Village Road, about the planned Santa Barbara General Plan update process. And we've been encouraging their members, residents, business owners, et cetera, to participate. So this draft proposal that they put together as a group with the assistance of architect Tom Bollet, who's also here today, was submitted to the City Council as a substantial public comment during our general plan update process. And so as I've explained to members of the community about this, the Council asked us to consider these interests in developing the general plan. Well, the general plan is very general, but we have released a draft general plan update document. It's undergoing public review right now, and we're going to hold a discussion with the ABR on this on April 19th for more discussion about the general plan. And within the general plan, we have many important goals and policies, some very specifically related to design. Design overlays in the Coast Village Road areas identified in the general plan. We also talk about different design tools such as floor area ratios or form-based codes. The general plan EIR also includes alternatives for looking at lower growth scenarios such as a building height or story reduction. So there is a study within the city's draft EIR that we just released about possibly changing building heights in certain parts of the community. I mentioned both floor area ratios and building heights as part of the larger general plan process because really the city is not in a position at this point to take the Coast Village Business Association's proposal as a formal application. Is not being processed formally, but the council did ask that these concepts be considered from a general plan standpoint. So we I think, have been responsive in general, and also, as I note in the memo to you all, some two specific development standards that this group has put forth are to establish a floor area ratio and to change the building height standard in the Coast Village Road area, and those would require very formal consideration. This discussion today is not a formal first step in any respect with that. That's not really the purpose of today's meeting. That would require zoning amendment hearings, notification of property owners, and all of that. But the purpose for today's meeting really is to just improve and engage the public dialogue with our design board, the ABR, for the Coast Village area, as well as later this week with the Planning Commission. When projects do come through in the Coast Village Road area, the residents and people in that community are made up of folks that live and work in that area, and they may be city residents or they may be county residents. And we have had some concerns expressed by county residents feeling that the city didn't really understand their concerns. And we want to be as open and to the engagement of the community at large, whether or not they happen to live just across a border of the city. And they've put quite a bit of interest and time into expressing their vision for this area. And so we see this as an opportunity for our boards and commissions to open the door and have just a general dialogue. So I just needed to make the distinction between formally considering these as guidelines. That's not what's being done at this time. The response that the city, we felt that we could do was generally include this in our general plan at this time. And then at some point, there'll be implementation and new design guidelines for different parts of the community, and where Coast Village Road in this area will line up, how Jaime and you all will at some point take this and incorporate it into improved ABR guidelines. We all have an interest in continually working to improve our design process. And so I see a future for this, but this is just a very preliminary discussion here today. And along those lines, from a very preliminary standpoint, looking through the draft set of architectural and guidelines and development standards, I did call to your attention the 11 general goals on page 4. These are very similar in some respects to the new design criteria that the City Council has codified in our municipal code for the design boards and decision makers to consider. But then there's also some additional details unique to this area about the beauty and ecological balance of Montecito and Santa Barbara's natural resources, a little bit more detail in terms of the feeling of the road and transportation issues as well. But these are very good, broad goals that I would think, even if these aren't formally adopted for some period of time, we should have these in mind as principles that are important in any planning and design review process. Then the second piece for me that I outlined in the memo is a new procedure, and we have an attachment to your memo that's signed by both Paul Casey and Glenn Russell from the County Planning and Development. And today also in the audience is Diane Black from the County Planning and Development. A group of us worked together to develop a coordinated concept review where major projects that come in on the Coast Village Road area, city staff would coordinate and inform the county, and at the appropriate time, which in most cases would be right around application completeness, we would schedule a public meeting discussion at the Montecito Planning Commission. And while we were discussing this with a group of people, including representatives of the Planning Commission with Montecito, the Montecito Association, the county staff, Coast Village Road folks, we made it very clear that, again, our main purpose is to engage in general dialogue. We're not going to be applying Montecito standards at the Planning Commission discussion in Montecito. City staff will be there with an applicant presenting the project for questions and comments and understanding of, okay, this requires a coastal permit from the city. Well, the city has coastal policies regarding neighborhood compatibility. The city will be doing an environmental review document. We'll be looking at loss of trees, water service, transportation issues. Again, these are planning issues that are generally understood, be it at a Montecito hearing or a city hearing, but we want to facilitate meaningful discussion in the city's review process. Some people who have read this have been confused and immediately say, well, are you really undergoing now a Montecito review? Is it going to be a formal action? There would be no action taken by the Montecito Planning Commission other than to forward its comments to the city's review process and to be a forum for residents in the Montecito Coast Village Road area to have another opportunity to discuss a major project. So far, we think that there could be a project or two in the wings out on Coast Village Road. We've had a preliminary inquiry regarding the Chevron station that's on the freeway side, south side of the road, where they would undertake a demolition and a reconstruction. I don't think you all have even seen that yet.
No.
Right. So that's very preliminary. That might be a project that comes through and would require a conditional use permit at the Planning Commission, so that would be potentially our first project. I know there have been concerns on the part of some folks in the Coast Village Road area of other development pressures and interests, but we really haven't heard much. I heard also about a facelift, just minor remodel of a portion of the Vaughn Center. We have not been approached regarding the corner as of yet, the old former Shell station. So as development activity has slowed down lately, this is not a busy time for pending projects on Coast Village Road. And that's part of the reason why we wanted to bring this to you today, is there's no particular project. This is an opportunity to just, again, open a dialogue with the community and hear about their concerns and interests for a part of the town where they spend an awful lot of time. And also just by way of introduction, and that planning staff will be back also to talk more with you all about the general plan. And we can, today, if you have any questions or would like any details relative to Coast Village Road, I can also point those out. So that's my overview. I believe Tom Bollet wanted to make a few comments, and then other members in the audience may also want to comment. But I was just going to do the brief introduction and then have discussion and questions.
Thanks, Betty.
Good afternoon. I wanted to just give a brief overview of kind of the inception of where this has come from and kind of how we were able to craft it or put it together. As Betty mentions, there's several elements of the city's urban grid guidelines. What we really try to do is take, I think, the best part of the Historic Landmarks District guidelines, city's urban grid design guidelines, and the Montecito Community Plan, which has a lot of talk about maintaining a semi-rural environment in the residential community immediately adjacent to Coast Village Road. In fact, Coast Village Road is really a little island, if you will, in Montecito, because it's got Montecito on 3.5 sides, if you will. And so in this, there are probably, I think on the market right now, there are 3 or 4 former gas station sites, all about 20,000 square feet, that will at some point very soon be coming in front of these groups and these boards. And that really sparked the concern that, a little bit like Chapala Street, if we don't get some guidelines in place and some ideas of what is compatible with our community, we could lose it quite quickly. And so we wanted to do is begin the discussions, and Grant House had suggested that we have town hall meetings and bring it really to the public. So in the town hall meetings, we invited the residents in the first several city blocks of neighbors from Montecito. The business owners were all invited personally, and the businesses themselves, and got together quite a diverse group for 2 different town hall meetings at the Montecito Country Club. We got a lot of issues out. There were several things that seemed to come through on almost unanimous basis, and that was that people are very happy with the village semi-rural character that we have now, and they don't want to see it change dramatically. And that's why the discussion of building heights, numbers of stories, and FARs potentially come into the mix. And actually have a handout here for you just from some of these discussions for reference. Pass those around. Really, if we examined, or what I did is I examined the FAR that's on the ground now, to how we could compare Coast Village Road to, for example, the Upper Montecito Village. And the Coast Village Road now, as it stands, is somewhere between about 0.25 and 0.3 FAR. So it's very rural, if you will, or small scale compared to downtown Santa Barbara or even Milpa Street. The Montecito Upper Village has an FAR limit currently of 0.25. So we're very similar in scale right now. Unfortunately, our current zoning that says we can go to 3 stories of 45 feet will allow up to about a 2.5 FAR on Coast Village Road. So the community really has decided, or had commented, that seeing 10 times the level of development on the road really would not be compatible with where we envisioned the road should go. And so that really became a kind of beginning point here. And so some of these are diagrams that I prepared for other Plan Santa Barbara hearings that I've attended and spoke with. But we really feel that we want to get our grasp, or try and help this board, give you some tools to better understand what we think might be compatible. And uniformly it was 2 stories or 1 story, small scale, businesses at the ground level, courtyards and paseos you could see into and walk into. And my concern is that what I have seen from my past experience on Historic Landmarks Commission and in seeing other proposed projects on Coast Village Road are that the developers typically are coming to us with something that's much larger scale than that. The gas station project on the corner that is currently approved was 1.57 FAR, so about 6 times the average of the community. And we can see if we took that scale project and manipulated it 3 or 4 times in the next 4 or 5 years, that the character of the road would change immensely. Also, is that we're very constrained on traffic. It's a 2-lane road. We've adopted, or Montecito has, that they don't want more traffic signals. So we're looking for not trying to build this up, but maintain that small character. So that was really the history of why we discussed FAR. I understand from Betty that it's difficult to do from an ordinance point of view. So we're hoping maybe it's more of a guideline, which is what it is right now in Montecito. But it's been very effective as far as getting our arms around projects. By just even asking, what is the FAR of this project from a board like yours, it gives you a tool to find out kind of where it is compared to what's on the ground. And so in bringing these guidelines forward and working with Betty, and we've been encouraged by DOS and other city council members to continue talking about FAR and with these boards and try and bring the awareness of the uniqueness of Coast Village Road. I'm also a Montecito Association board member and also on vice chair or co-vice chair of the land use committee there. And they are very much in support of also trying to maintain this village character on the road. So that's a brief overview. I can answer questions and how it came about or what the thoughts are. I know it's a lot to digest in a short period of time.
I think it's, I thought your explanation was pretty clear on how it came about and the process that you guys have gone through. So I don't have any, I personally don't have any questions right now, but after we digest the whole thing, we might have in time for sure.
Great.
I have a question, actually.
Go on.
This is going to be given out to people by the city staff who come in and request information about design guidelines for Coast Village Road applicants.
That is our hope. I don't think we're there yet.
No.
Okay.
No. In order to do that, we would want to see them developed officially as city design guidelines. Where we're at right now with this is we want to improve the Design Review Board and the Planning Commission's understanding of what has gone on in the community and their interests. It's to give better depth of understanding of when they come to a hearing, they want the city to develop specific guidelines for Coast Village Road. And really our limitation in being able to do that right now is we want to see that the general plan update is adopted and see that there's a priority of implementation with limited resources of what we're going to get rolling. We've had multiple family design guidelines on the list of guidelines to develop since at least 5 to 6 years ago in one of the housing element updates. So we always have an interest in improving our design guidelines, but it does take us some time and resources to get to them. So I don't think we would present these now as official city guidelines, but the Coast Village Business Road Association, like any major neighborhood association, when we have new developers come to us, we encourage them to meet with their neighbors or if there's a local business or neighborhood association. And so we have no problem with people engaging in this discussion in the community, but they're not city standards for review as of yet.
So what are they going to be used for is my question. I still don't understand.
They're a pending draft for future development and review and approval by the city.
So if an applicant came in now and was going to be doing a development on Coast Village Road, they would not be given this at all?
We would tell them about them, and we would say that the city would like to work with the Coast Village Business Association and others in the area to develop guidelines, but they're not official guidelines yet. These are this group's idea, And so I want them to know, and I would like you to know, what this group's idea is. But it has not gone through a formal city process, so I can't really say.
And what's the group?
The Coast Village Business Association.
And the Coast Village Business Association is made up of the people who are members of that.
We represent both the property owners and business owners.
So all the property owners are on board with
Not
this?
all of them, but all of them that we can get to join us. Maybe,
But that doesn't say anything, really.
But if you have a group of people that have organized and put this much effort into something, we think that that should be acknowledged and understood. So that's what we're trying to do. We're not in a place where we can formally recognize it, but we want to, all the same. This is a lot of good work, and a lot of these design and planning principles are very similar to the design and planning principles that we do officially use every day here. So we just want to recognize that and give them and give the review boards, everyone, a little more mutual understanding is the level that we're at. It would take quite a bit of time and dedicated assignment to take this to the next level, and unfortunately I've not been in a position to be able to do that since they've expressed this interest. So it's on a list. It's in the general plan as well, that looking at community character, strengthen and enhance design and development review standards and process to enhance community character, promote housing affordability, and further community sustainability principles. Design overlays. Create design overlays for selected areas of the community, and we have downtown, Coast Village Road, Upper State Street. So we're at this general plan policy level of considering this information, not really at a official handed out, this is city standard as of yet.
And if I may, the reason I'm asking that question is because we have a set of guidelines that we've been reviewing for La Cumbra Plaza. It was adopted, and then they've come in, and so now we have taken that to heart, and we've applied that to the projects that have come in and directed the applicants to meet those requirements, and we've been really pretty strict about it. You know, you guys adopted this, and so, I mean, they actually formally adopted it. But in this case, when a Coast Village Road project comes to us now, I would feel more comfortable knowing how many of the property owners supported this document and supported the 2-story versus 3-story and supported the proposed FAR before we would be able to tell them, because they're going to ask us, who are these people that put this up? So that's my question. I would feel more comfortable knowing what the majority of the property owners are, what's their opinion on it, before we start saying, yeah, you should really look at this and take it to heart, because it's a serious thing that we think is going to be coming around. Or no, it's just we don't know actually how many people make up this support of this document. I don't know that right now.
And if Danny Kopis, our president, could speak to that, and I think he's more up to date on the membership numbers and things. So I'd like to
Maybe something. Maybe if you could just put something together, like a letter or something, stating who, it would make me feel. Maybe some of the other members feel more.
If I could, I think I'm glad you made the comment, but I'll just ask Betty here. I think that the good thing, if I'm reading you right, Betty, and you correct me, the good thing is that with the general plan update that's now being formulated, it's always good that when we're looking to make what's going to be the decision maker for the whole city for a long time to come, it's good to know in advance of what people are thinking out there, right? And that's where the benefit of getting any block of people who have ideas in common, that they can organize themselves and get together. It's always good to have that as a preliminary. And that, having the document, it's also good for you to see where they're coming from. And then we go into the general plan, and hopefully what I'm hearing from you is that you know what's in there, but you the focus is on getting the general plan organized, and the general plan will leave itself as room to maneuver once it's organized, so that as this gets put in its place, it will now be able to deal with these other separate little areas that will then enhance the design guidelines as we move forward beyond the general guidelines. And so you see this as a good step, and maybe there's another group out there like you, but have different ideas, that will get their ideas together, and they may bring a packet before Betty and for consideration, and that's always good to have everybody organized. So having said, if that is the correct process that we're looking at, then looking at what answering Dawn is that when projects come before us, it's good for us to know that there are parties out there that have these different ideas, but we really cannot take any one of these documents that have not been formally recognized and put into it and use it as any sort of guidelines ourselves. We have to go by the present ones that we are enforcing. Know that there are people out there with different views, right, but we have to follow what the city has laid out in their planning process. And I think that's what I'm reading that's going on here, and correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, and unfortunately, there's some things like the urban grid design line have a lot of great comments about character and about sidewalk scale. Unfortunately, we're not part of the grid.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So Coastal Village Road has been left out of most of your planning documents.
Right.
So we don't, it's just zoning ordinance, 4 stories or 3 stories or 45 feet is all there is.
Right.
So what we're hoping to do is to bring some of those standards into Coastal Village Road.
Right. And knowing that, and Betty knows that, I guess as they look towards the general plan, there will be some way in there where you may or may not have these specific areas that you know you will be dealing with in a very short timeline after this gets organized, that would make for revision or whatever, however you want to phrase it, of those guidelines in those particular areas.
I think really we just wanted to bring attention to our effort to your board.
Okay.
So that when that next project comes in, you'll be able to say, wow, there's a group there that is concerned and organized, and we would like to have it be a wonderful road for everybody.
Okay.
So that's really
And they're
what it's
thinking of this as a broader community issue, the road, and then within the Santa Barbara and Montecito context. And often when you have a project before you, it's not a good time for you to be thinking about that the first time.
Right.
So that's why we brought it today. When you don't have any Coast Village Road project before you, there isn't even a strong pending project in the wings.
Right.
But you do have your own ABR guidelines. We have the municipal code, design criteria, and there's a lot of overlap here.
Right.
And so we just want you to see the overlap and also be aware that there are technical lines as well. There's still a 45-foot and 3-story allowance in the Coast Village Road area, and the city has not adopted any FARs. We know that. That's in one category. But then there's a lot of other good thought here and other design considerations as well. And they don't have to be all put aside because we're just not fully there yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So yes, I think we understand.
Okay. All right. 1 and then 2. And then we have a speaker.
Just a couple quick thoughts. I'll just go through my thoughts. Does the general plan use the word semi-rural in any of its documents when we're making reference to the Coast Village Road area?
No.
Okay, because that was the one first thing that hit me, and I apologize, Tom, Mr. Belay, because I don't see that as semi-rural. I see the adjacent neighborhood, definitely semi-rural. I see the upper village, definitely semi-rural. But Coast Village Road, the part we're talking about between basically the Vons and the Montecito Inn, is not the word semi-rural the way I would see it. I would see it as suburban and small town feel, but it really, there's a continuous concrete sidewalk from one end of the road to the other. It's not much landscaping. Occasionally there's pockets and things like this, but it's not semi-rural. So I would suggest a little tweaking in the verbiage to sort of say small town feeling. And so under your goals, item 1 and item 7, which is on page 4, it's a small town feeling you want, not semi-rural. At least when I hear semi-rural, I think of Los Olivos, I think of the Upper Village kind of thing. So that was the first thing that hit me. The second one is with the FARs. I'm glad you provided this document because I didn't know what numbers meant when numbers were being thrown out there because I don't have anything to relate it to.
Right.
And I would like to see if the city wants to sort of have us use this as a review tool similar to what we do at the Single Family Design Board. I'd like to know what the FARs for the other properties along Coast Village Road. I don't know the names of the buildings well enough, but where the old Haagen-Dazs ice cream parlor used to be. You know, and then I think Angel.
Right.
There's a lot of really dense buildings there. It'd be kind of nice to know what those FARs are so that we can compare to see what this number means in relationship to the existing buildings that are in the neighborhood. The most important feeling of Coast Village Road is the pedestrian walkability. What happens at 7 p.m., what happens in the morning when people go get their coffee, and the paseos, and you make reference to it in the courtyards. That is what is so sweet and wonderful about that road, and that needs to be preserved. And some big buildings with a lot of FAR, perhaps, are able to still have courtyards and plazas and that walkability. So that's pedestrian link is important. And the last thing, what you're doing is important with all of the general plan. It's no different than what the Mesa architects are doing for the Mesa area, where they have a vision that they want to have. And so what you're doing is important to be included in the process. It's another voice, and it's a professional voice. So I commend you on what you're doing. It's great, but those are a couple of my concerns.
Thanks, Paul. Good comments. Gary?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. First off, I'd like to congratulate you in getting the community together, and you've got a concept of an idea of what you want in a particular sector of the community. And these are great tools. We have these tools for Milpas Street design guidelines, and we have design guidelines for Upper State Street. And I think that this is a great direction for us to have a design guideline for a particular area. I know that these things take time, and what I was curious about is, Betty, is there any direction that the city will be getting involved with a particular guideline? Is that on the agenda, so to speak, that this type of process is going to start to happen for design guidelines, or is this just something that basically there's a community that, like the Mountain Association, or a different? Is it just going to be more like a citizens planning association?
I think when you look at the city's record in terms of developing design guidelines and having a very thoughtful and conscious and dedicated design review process, the city will continue to do that, and that's what the general plan is recommending. And we are recommending that the city continue to pursue and update special design guidelines for unique and special areas of the community. So this is, I'm reading specifically from city policy, that we would like to develop design guidelines, we believe, for the Coast Village Road area. It is a unique and special area of the community, and we can draw from general design guidelines throughout the community. I know that Jaime, he and I have talked many times about trying to get a good foundation of just the Architectural Board of Review design guidelines that pretty much apply across the board. And then if you have unique guidelines for special areas beyond that, then you can have focused design guidelines discussions. If you look in this document or you go to our counter, we have how many? 13, 12 now. And that's both a good thing, but it can also be difficult to manage. So we think we're going to continue to be in this business. It's very important to the community. It's why you all are here. We think design guidelines help create better projects and better community. And so I think the city will remain committed. I just can't say exactly when. We were going to do this in Upper State Street, and we needed to take an abbreviated course on Upper State Street when it came to the design guidelines because of time and money. So this is a 20-year plan, I believe that it will happen, but I can't tell you exactly when. I think it will be some time before we formally get around to updating all the ABR guidelines and creating new guidelines for Coast Village Road. But there's a commitment, I believe, to continue that.
Well, what I wanted to say, one of the faults about having the design guidelines is that, like you said, there's 13 of them. Mm-hmm. When we have a project that's on 101 on the freeway, there's specific rules and regulations for the freeway, and if we have something at the harbor, there's specific rules and Milpa Street. But what I find is that those guidelines aren't always brought out, or they're not really strictly adhered to. And because they're guidelines and not an ordinance, I think it's important for the community to, when there's a project in their area, for them to be more involved and speak what they want and what they need, as opposed to just relying on the guidelines. The guidelines are good, but they're not always reviewed right at the point that when they need to be.
And we certainly will be involved.
Okay.
The one thing I just want to mention real quickly too is that the Coastal Road Business Association approached me as one of their members to help with this. It wasn't something I concocted on my own.
Okay, thanks. I just maybe you could remain there until we have the speaker. Just so this is Victoria Green.
Right here?
Yes, thanks.
You can turn that one on.
Hi. I'm Victoria Green. I'm the Executive Director for the Montecito Association. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the Montecito Association, we're a nonprofit membership organization, and primarily our membership's comprised of Montecito residents and property owners. So we've been following the developments along Coast Village Road, and we've been participating with the Coast Village Business Association as they've been working on these or trotting these guidelines out for some public meetings. And we've also, over the last couple of years, commented to Planning Commission and City Council with respect to the desire for there to be some planning along Coast Village Road. So, that effort feels like it's moving forward now, thanks, I think, in large part to Betty for bringing this to you and then on to the Planning Commission. We understand how it fits in with the general plan and how the city's looking at it as something to come as a part of implementation. Of course, we'd love to see it happen sooner, but, the reality is the reality. Right. That said, though, I think that, our membership and my board is real interested in seeing there be some effort to ensure that the road stays compatible with the surrounding community, including, unincorporated portions of Montecito. And to the extent I think that the goals in these guidelines can help to inform your review and your decision making, I think that's something that can start. I mean, we're talking about some pretty broad things, like neighborhood compatibility, which I'm sure you can find described as well in the documents that and the findings you're required to make. So we're just here to say that we support the effort of the Coast Village Business Association, and we look forward to having it move forward and provide some guidance for the kind of development that occurs in the future on Coast Village.
Great. Thanks very much. And thanks, Tom. Thanks, Betty.
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to acknowledge a letter from Ms. Paula Westbury as well.
Okay, thank you. Okay, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. And April 19th, as part of your meeting, we'll be discussing the general plan and the draft DIR. I hope you all get a chance. We provided you with discs, and it's online. There's important policies and ideas for design and historic preservation and environment, and we're hoping to hear more from the ABR in the future, too.
Okay. Does the disc carry any more information than the pamphlet that we got prior to that? And
the disc has this entire document,
which is actually bigger than, because the pamphlet we got was like
the pamphlet. You may have received the executive summary of the EIR.
Right.
So yes, the disc has the entire general plan document as proposed, the housing element, land use element, and introduction, and it also has, there's another disc for the full draft environmental impact report. Okay. So definitely more information on the discs. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks,
you.
Betty. Okay. Second item, discussion item of the evening, Architectural Board of Review's role and responsibility for reviewing and adopting environmental documents.
Good afternoon, members of the ABR, Mr. Chair. My name is Michael Berman. I'm a project planner, environmental analyst with the City of Santa Barbara. I was requested to come before you today to give a brief explanation of the process the city uses to review projects from an environmental review perspective. The purpose of this discussion is to review the general procedures for the Architectural Board of Review to review and consider environmental documents. And we are not here today to review the actual initial study and mitigated negative declaration, which will be before you soon, the 915 East Anapamu project. Usually, environment review at the Architectural Board of Review consists of an exemption, and in those cases the ABR is required to do very little but to know that the environmental review has been conducted and it consists of an exemption. Occasionally, ABR is environment review requires a negative declaration or a mitigated negative declaration, which is based on an initial study. The initial study is essentially a checklist with a description of some existing conditions and an explanation of why particular boxes were checked the way they were, potentially significant, mitigable, less insignificant. And it also includes mitigation measures where impacts are identified as significant and sometimes also are recommended to further reduce impacts. The initial study sets forth facts, reasoning based on those facts, and describes the level of the environmental impact and provides mitigation measures where appropriate. The MND indicates that the project, based on the initial study, would, with mitigation measures applied, result in less than significant impacts on the environment. The Architectural Board of Review is expected to consider the initial study and the MND, including the comments and responses to the initial study made during the comment period when making decisions on the project. This is a provision of the California Environmental Quality Act that basically specifies that when a discretionary decision is being made, there needs to be an environmental review, and sometimes it consists of a mitigated negative declaration or an initial or a negative declaration, and it lays out the rules for doing this. And basically, I'm going to describe a little bit more of that to you. The ABR must conclude that based on the whole record, that is, the initial study as well as the comments and responses that were received during the comment period, it must conclude based on the whole record before the Architectural Board of Review that there is no substantial evidence that the project will cause significant impact on the environment that the mitigated negative declaration reflects the agency's independent judgment and analysis. So, essentially, it implies that the members of the ABR have reviewed the document. They have looked at the discussion, and it seems reasonable that it supports the conclusions reached.
I'm sorry. It seems reasonable that what?
That the document supports the conclusions reached. That the initial study discussion supports the conclusion that there is no significant impact on the environment after the mitigation measures have been applied. If you like, in a minute I'll stop and you can ask more questions about this. I'll try to unpack some of this for you. Substantial evidence consists of facts, reasonable assumptions based on the facts, and expert opinion based on facts. Another way to say this is that enough relevant information and reasonable inferences from this information is made to provide a fair argument, even though other conclusions could also be reached based on these same facts. So, once the ABR has reviewed the initial study and concluded that the the document does provide a reasonable discussion of the project's impacts and addresses impacts that are significant with mitigation measures. The next step is to make some findings. And the findings that are required are 7 in number. I don't really want to go through them in all great detail, but just to point out that one of the findings is that the ABR has considered the initial study. In other words, it's been reviewed has reviewed the initial study and the comments and responses that resulted from the public review of the initial study. That it is the ABR's independent judgment and analysis based on the whole record that there's no substantial evidence that the project will have a significant effect on the environment, and that mitigation measures identified in the mitigated negative declaration that would avoid or reduce all potentially significant impacts to less than significant levels have been included in the project or made conditions of approval. There's a mitigation monitoring and reporting program that's in the initial study that's required, and that's one of the findings that it will be there. And the other ones are got to do with fees for fish and game review and the location of the documents during public review. And those things have all been accomplished by staff. We put the document in a certain location, advertised it in a notice that it will be available for public review, received the comments, responded to the comments. So far we have submitted to the public and to ABR a draft initial mitigated negative declaration, which consists of the declaration itself and the initial study. And then we have circulated that for public review. We received comments. We responded to those comments. The comments and responses are contained in the final mitigated negative declaration that has been submitted to the Architectural Board of Review for your review. And there will be a hearing noticed soon wherein the ABR will be asked to adopt this mitigated negative declaration and make the findings that I outlined earlier. Staff will submit at that hearing a detailed list of findings with the appropriate wording, and at that time ABR will be able to just refer to that document to make the findings and won't have to go through them in great detail. And that concludes my brief presentation. I'm available for any questions if you may have any.
Thanks very much, but I think we might have.
Oh, great.
And
Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
I'll start off just for point of clarification. I may have heard this incorrectly, so forgive me if I have, but there's an ordinance in the city that requires the ABR to review any EIR or mitigated negative deck and approve it on the basis of any project?
No. The city's CEQA guidelines allow that a mitigated negative declaration can go to any discretionary board. There's no ordinance that says that. It's our CEQA guidelines. CEQA requires an environmental review at a discretionary hearing. And in this case, staff determined that a mitigated negative declaration was the appropriate level of environmental review. Does that answer your question? Okay.
I might have lost you, but let me see if I got this.
Right.
CEQA requires a review of an EIR, or in this case, a mitigated negative deck, to be reviewed by a discretionary body?
No, CEQA requires environmental review for all discretionary decisions. Environmental review can consist of an exemption, a negative declaration, a mitigated negative declaration, or an environmental impact report.
Correct.
In the city's guidelines for CEQA, they specify that a mitigated negative declaration need not go to the Planning Commission. So in this case, the only discretionary decision required for this project is at ABR. And therefore, this is one of those rare instances in which the mitigated negative declaration is coming to ABR and not to the Planning Commission, because the Planning Commission is not making any decisions on this project. Does that make it clearer?
Yeah, I get it. I just don't I get it and I don't get it. I don't get how a voluntary board of members who aren't getting paid by the city and don't have any regulatory position for environmental issues are required or requested to even approve and make findings for something.
Well, the Planning Commission is also a voluntary group. They're not paid by the city. Well, they might get a stipend, but they're...
They get a stipend.
Pardon? The ABR gets a stipend
No.
too?
No, they don't.
Well, I'm sorry. I can't help that, but I can tell you
I know
what
you
the
can't.
rules are. I wish I could. I'd give you what if I could.
I think that what Clay is also saying, and I'm going to just segue into my question, is that we're an aesthetic board.
Yes.
We're not here to determine or review that 50 semis went down the street and the decibel level was within a certain level that we think is now approvable or okay, or that the soil bearing capacity of the soil for this property, we've reviewed the calcs and we understand and we agree that with the findings that the soils engineer made. This is not that kind of a board, so we're an aesthetic board.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, how can we review this independently as an aesthetic board?
You have staff support. We have a staff in the city that have reviewed this document from various different areas of expertise like geology, traffic, and so you have to have some guidance from the staff that we have looked at these issues. We're asking for members of the public now to look at this document, and you, as a board that's formed from members of the public, are performing this service for the city to help us with this review of this project. CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, requires a discretionary review to be accompanied by an environmental review.
I think we get that.
So we can't get around it. It's a law that requires the city to do this. So I don't understand what else I can explain to help you.
Let me just ask one more question.
Go ahead, Dawn.
In this case, it sounds like what the city is asking us to do is to go beyond an aesthetic review when the city has always, not always, but they're continually reminding us that we're strictly an aesthetic board.
Mm-hmm.
And that our comments are to be limited to aesthetic comments only. We're being continually asked to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And reminded of it. So now we've got in our heads that we're supposed to make aesthetic comments only, but now we're being asked to not do that. So I'm confused.
Well, occasionally, as I said earlier, projects come to the ABR that require an environmental review other than an exemption. Those environmental reviews include issues other than design. And so my answer to your question is yes, we're asking that you do things other than design review for the adoption of this environmental document when it comes to the hearing. Not at this moment. We're just talking about the procedures during this hearing.
Gary?
What governing body decides that an aesthetic board can review this report? I mean, does city council direct you to have ABR do it? Does staff direct it?
Again,
Because again, this is out of our general purview, at least it is as far as the city charter goes.
well, it's not a city regulation. This is a California law that says that when an environmental document, when a discretion decision is made, an environmental review is required. And so that's what's triggering our need to have you guys adopt this initial study and mitigate a negative deck.
I think,
Chair, question.
You said, I'm sorry, you said something a minute ago that it needs to be reviewed by the public.
Well, it has been reviewed by the public.
Okay. And then you said ABR as part of the public.
Well, you had, one of your members indicated that you are just part of the public and you've been made a member of this board and you're not paid.
Hold on, I haven't gotten my question yet.
Yeah, sorry.
My question is this. If members of the public and members of ABR who are members of the public are reviewing this document and it comes before us, are we then going to be instructed to, or should we be, hearing what the general public has to say about this document? Because this document's pretty verbose, for one, but it has a lot of information in it to which I bet much of the general public doesn't quite understand and will have many opinions about. And how is the ABR supposed to make the quote-unquote findings necessary to push this forward and consider public comment?
To answer your question, the members of the public have indeed reviewed this document, and there have been written comments received regarding the adequacy of this document, and we've responded to those in a document called the Final Mitigated Negative Declaration. So we have already done that. The public comment has been received and addressed.
So it sounds to me that it's a formality issue, that you need it reviewed by a governing or some body, and you want it to be ABR as opposed to Planning Commission.
Correct. Well, we don't want it to be. You're the discretionary board.
Okay, we have.
So is Planning Commission.
Yeah, clear.
It's not going to Planning Commission.
Let's leave that open, and you could come back and ask a question again. Let's leave that open. We have 2 speaker slips, and it may be helpful to get. So is that Suzanne, and then just a new one. And then is that Jan Gomez? Jared Going. Okay. Suzanne Elledge.
Good afternoon, everybody. I wanted to just offer a little bit of my perspective because I happen to be representing the project that's going to come before you, where you have been asked to make this finding. And you all look very distressed at the moment. So I just wanted to share my thoughts with you, if I could. First of all, the document, I saw you looking at it. It looks thick and like it's a lot of reading for you. The analysis is actually this part of the document. And the rest of the document are all of the technical studies that we submitted on behalf of the applicant to address the different issue areas so that staff could conduct their analysis. And staff has conducted their analysis, and they've reached conclusions, and that's really what you are being asked to review. Really, you don't take on any more of a responsibility when you review and approve this document than when you review and approve a CEQA exemption, which you do frequently. In this particular case, this project required a mitigative negative declaration, so there is a little more reading to do than there is when you read a CEQA exemption and find that you agree with staff that there is no significant impact on the environment. That is just as much responsibility as saying, yes, there's a potential for significant impacts, but this is how they're going to be mitigated. So it's not that this is really a new responsibility that you're taking on. It's that you're looking at a different type of document than you usually look at. So I think that that's an important thing to realize. You often say that a project is going to have no impact. That CEQA exemption accompanies projects that you look at all the time. This one says there may be impacts, and this is how we're going to ensure that they don't happen, that this is how we ensure that they are going to be mitigated. And I don't think it's really that you're being asked to do anything different than what the Planning Commission is being asked to do in projects where they are the review authority. This project, being a rental project in the zone district that it's in, only requires ABR review and approval. It does not require Planning Commission review and approval. So because you make the decision in this particular project type, and this project has this kind of document, this document is before you. So I'm not sure that that was really clearly understood. So I just wanted to make those clarifications. And I also wanted to just point out that there were, I think, 3 or 4 letters written during the public comment period. My office was one of them, and those have been copied for you, and then there's been a response by staff provided at the end of the document. So you can quickly see the comments that were made by the public and what the response was. So I'm here for questions if you have them, but I just wanted to offer my perspective to you on what it is you're being asked to do.
Thanks, Suzanne. Any questions for Suzanne before we take the other speaker? Thanks, Suzanne.
Thank you.
So,
Mr. Chair, I also want to point out that there have been other instances in which the ABR has had initial studies, mitigated negative declarations before it, and it has adopted these documents. This isn't the first one.
I don't remember any, actually. And I also don't remember making any findings unless they were visually, the findings that we're making are
It's been a while.
visual.
Yeah.
Like we have to make no visual impact findings all the time,
Yeah.
but they're visual.
and I guess if I could just answer a little bit of what Suzanne was saying is it's when you say it's no more different than when there's a negative declaration exemption. I have to say at that level, you have these 4 levels that it can come under, and that's the first level. And sometimes the first level is very cut and dry. It's very clear. And for people who are at our level, we're doing with the aesthetics, and we generally, have a certain wherewithal about everything else. We can make that confidently also. But as it starts to get down into the different levels, it's not that we couldn't make this one, but in a sense, it's a deeper amount of work, and it's a deeper amount of responsibility to be able to back, what you're saying. And my fear that is not only that we're taking that on, but my fear is also that this may be the first in many to come. And I think that's something that we have to consider very strongly, that this is what's being asked of us. And I think we have concerns.
Mr. Chair, may I just comment on that? I really understand your concern, and I actually appreciate the seriousness with which you take this responsibility, because clearly there's a responsibility that goes along with this. I just want to say that similar to planning commissioners, the kinds of issue areas that are covered in any environmental document are very technical, and planning commissioners don't have special degrees or expertise in archaeology or geology and these other issue areas either. And they do heavily rely on staff to review the technical documents that are submitted and provide them with a summary of those. And then they have to go through the process that you're being asked to go through of reading the document and making sure they understand it to a certain degree so that they feel comfortable making the findings. So that's true for them as it is for you. And I just have to say that as somebody representing the applicant, this is the way the process for this type of project is established and set up. It doesn't happen that often, which is why some of you have never seen an environmental document like this, but it has happened in the past. And it would be very distressing to an applicant to get all the way through a process which frankly has taken a very long time for the type of project that it is, to get to the end, to find resistance from the very decision makers that right now the ordinance is written should be looking at this project. So I just want you to know, I feel your resistance, but I also think that it is what the process calls for in this case. And perhaps there should be a discussion about whether you want to do it in the future, but I certainly hope it doesn't delay this project going forward.
I just want to mention that we're supposed to just not talk about a specific project today, just the initial, this process. We want to.
Yeah.
So you can take the comment I just made in general for any applicant in this with this particular type of project.
Right.
So I
okay.
know.
Thanks, Suzanne.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to respond to what Suzanne just said, because I understand what you're saying, and I can't speak to the rest of the board in terms of environmental documents, but we've come across them in various points of our careers for different reasons. I don't think the resistance is necessarily any applicant or no applicant. I think the resistance is trying to assess what our responsibilities are and where they lie and where they don't. And there seems to be some confusion now on our end, at least on mine, about where our responsibilities start and stop. And if we're required to review this and approve a mitigated negative deck on a project, any project, because we're the only board that sees it, then that's And if that's part of our ordinance and part of our responsibility, then that's new information. And I think the glossy look on our eyes are like, okay, now we're in charge of reviewing staff's comments and making findings on a mitigated negative deck, which probably everybody sitting on this board right now has never had to do that for any project in the city of Santa Barbara. So that's where I think the confusion's lying.
I understand.
And I erred a little bit in saying that it's only CEQA. The city has adopted CEQA guidelines by resolution. The city council has adopted them, and those guidelines allow for ABR to provide the discretionary review. So it's not just CEQA, it's the city's process that describes this need.
I understand, and I think that there will be a need for further discussion on this process.
I appreciate that.
From what I can gather here.
I appreciate that, and I also want to applaud you the seriousness with which you take these issues. This is great. I mean, it really is a responsibility that you've taken on by doing this. So, if I can be of any assistance to you in your review, feel free to contact me, and I'll try to help you in any way that I can.
Okay, thanks. I'll just have the last speaker, and then we have to try and move on here. Okay. Your name for the record?
Hi, Jarrett Gorin, Vanguard Planning, and I'm not here representing anybody in particular or any project in particular. I'm actually here for another item, but I've been listening to this discussion, and I, like Ms. Elledge, represent applicants, and we appreciate the city looking for an abbreviated way to, if there is really no other decision maker required, but there is a CEQA review requirement, to have it be able to come through a one-stop shop. But I'm concerned as a former CEQA practitioner with what I'm hearing. I agree with everything in terms of categorical exemptions, because those are projects that they are each a category of project that the legislature has just determined that everything in that category is exempt from CEQA, and it's more of a bright line standard that you can look at and say, yeah, it is exempt, or no, it's not exempt, and staff usually makes that determination, and they're usually right. Mitigated negative declarations are different than that, because they require mitigation measures to make a project not have a Class 1 impact. And one of the most critical things under CEQA is public review and input of whether or not mitigation measures are accurate. Also, the legal standard of review or challenge on a negative declaration is much, much looser than it is on a categorical exemption. It's only a fair argument. Anybody can show up and just say, well, I think there's going to be traffic, and I have traffic counts, and that seems like a lot of traffic to me, and it wasn't addressed, and now you've got a fair argument potentially that somebody can challenge a project under, or they can bring in an expert like a traffic engineer to say it. But then it's an entirely different standard of review. And I agree with Ms. Sherry completely. When we've been in front of your board, you guys are extremely good at keeping your review focused in scope on the aesthetics of a project. I mean, I've been here plenty of times on projects when we've had opponents of the project come in here and try to raise non-aesthetic issues in front of your board, and your board stays focused on aesthetics. That's what the ABR does. And aesthetics is not the only category that gets reviewed in an environmental document, like a mitigated negative declaration. When you are adopting findings to adopt an environmental document, like a mitigated negative declaration, what you're saying is we find this to be legally adequate under CEQA and to meet our burden of CEQA compliance for the city of Santa Barbara. Now, how can you say that if you haven't evaluated the analysis in it and heard people's comments on the mitigation measures and the adequacy of those? And, I understand what we're trying to do here, but it's a really big conundrum because these guys look at aesthetics. That's it. And environmental documents cover everything. So maybe the best way is to find another decision maker that can only look at the environmental portion of it so that we still have an abbreviated process for applicants. But I completely see the bind you're in.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate that. Okay.
Mr.
I think
Chair.
yes.
Let me just also acknowledge a letter from Ms. Paula Westbury.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I did have
What is
Yes.
Ms. Paula Westbury?
Yes, Gary.
Answer for or what?
Hang on, Gary. Wait.
What I wanted to say is that when we do have a project that we are to do this review with, it should be noted at the beginning of a project, and we should know this at the start, so we can get
listen to my feet right. So we have the opportunity from the beginning of the project to review this situation. So if there's questions from the public about traffic, that would be the time to address it. Not at the end of the project when we get a document that says, okay, now you can review this. Well, we've had an opportunity to review this, and we also had plans to look at the plans, but we weren't looking at any of that during the entire process of this project. We only look at it towards the end, and I don't think that's a fair assessment of looking at a project to do that. Mm-hmm. And also, the time allotted when we look at one of these projects of 30 minutes and to get a document thrown at you and say, okay, you reviewed it, give us your stamp of approval. Also not a fair assessment of what we will be looking at.
Thanks, Gary.
Roselle and Chair Manson-Hain. I was listening to Mr. Berman, and he explains it in a very technical way because he's dealt with this obviously a lot more than I have, but in a more of a breaking it down sense, what happened was we prepared what was called a draft negative declaration, and we presented it to you. And we realized at that time that you guys, as a board, were kind of like, well, we've never done this, these individual board members. So that's why we had Mr. Berman come in today to kind of explain to you the process. And we submitted that draft to you about a month ago. So that's the similar process. That's what would happen if this was going to Planning Commission. It's a 30-day public review process. And then during that public review process, anybody from anywhere can submit comments if they have any concerns. And we did get comments, and those are in here. So I think once and anybody, like I said, anybody, any commissioner, any board member, any random person driving by that sees a sign can make comments. And we've gotten on this letter with the posting that's required, the noticing that's been done for ABR and for the environmental document, we've received, I think it's 4 letters. And so we responded to those letters in this document, and now we've prepared what the next step is to take those comments, incorporate them into the document, and prepare what's called the final negative declaration. So in an effort to get that to you again as soon as possible, we've given that to you today. So you've already had a month to review. Not that I'm not saying you have had time, but we've given it to you 30 days ago to review the draft, and now we've prepared what's called the final. And so that's not going to...
Okay.
30 days ago? You got what was called the draft. So you prepare, what you do is you prepare a draft, and you release it, and then anybody can comment on it. And then after the 30-day period, we take all the comments, we review them, and then we incorporate them into the document, and then we call it a final document. So you can look through here, and you'll see on the side, you'll see where the track changes have been made, where we've actually incorporated comments from the interested parties. Also, those comments are provided at the back of the document. So you'll see all of their letters, and then you'll see staff's comments to the letters. So in addition to the original 30-day period for the draft, there's now another 2 weeks to review the actual final. And as Mrs. Zelich showed you, the document's really, it looks a lot scarier than it really is.
Okay.
It's not that it's scary, Kelly, at all. We're not saying that it's scary in any way or that we don't mind reading this at night when we go home, which is, a separate issue.
It's great for falling asleep.
That's not the issue. Clay keeps saying that. It's we take our positions really seriously, and
I respect that, yeah.
so it's just a little surprising that now we're being asked to do something so in depth.
Yeah, and like I think Mr. Verma said, it does happen occasionally, but just not very often. And this project is not a tentative map. There's no modifications. The only discretionary review that's required for this project is design review.
Okay.
So that's Planning Commission's just not required for a rental housing project.
Yeah. I think I think there's a lot more to be discussed on the actual process here, especially among the board members, and where we actually come out. But I'm thankful you came and gave us this information about the responsibility factor, and you can tell that we have questions that we need to resolve ourselves on how this process works. And I'd like at this time, just to make the board aware that with this coming out now, it's throwing a whole new light on things that were sort of implied before, when we were told that it's possible that in the process that the city is going through to try and either save money or save manpower, et cetera, is that the board is possibly going to be seeing more of this. And I think that that's something that we have to resolve ourselves and how that plays out. And so, you know, we just don't have the time to do that right now, but that's something that we're going to have to discuss.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to comment on your remarks regarding that you'll be seeing a lot more of these documents. I don't think this has anything to do with cost cutting in the city and saving money. This has to do with the way this particular project that we're not supposed to be discussing in any detail came through the process and how the process affects it. It just happened that this particular project, because the way it was configured and the zoning ordinance requirements, did not require planning commission review. It only came to ABR. And it was one of those few projects that when it came to ABR required environmental review in addition to the normal projects usual projects that you see which are exempt from CEQA.
All right.
So I wouldn't expect a whole lot more than you've been seeing in the past. So it's probably just a blip on the radar.
Yeah. Thanks for that clarification. Okay. That's helpful. Okay. Thank you. Okay, we are half hour behind, and we'd like to start with 803 North Milper Street, first item on the agenda. Preliminary review. You are?
I'm going to step down. I know.
And what if I say no?
You.
Jeez. You can't keep doing this all the time. Okay, 803 North Milper Street. Okay, item number 2.
Item number 1.
No,
Item on number 1.
I know, but I was going to say we will going to move on to item number 2 very quickly here for. Okay, if you could just press these Higgs here and state your name for the record. And
Hi, Jarrett Gorin from Vanguard Planning, and I'm here representing 803 North Milpa Street, LLC, the property owner on this property here. And we were here once before for comments only for the temporary use on our project site. This is a corner of De La Guerra and Milpas, and we actually just got a mixed-use project approved at City Council based on throwing out an appeal. But we're not going to build it right away, and we'd like to do something with the site in the meantime so that we don't keep getting hit with graffiti, and generally it looks better and we can make some money.
Okay, in that regard, if you're going ahead with this project, let me read the minutes and then we'll go through that. And so the minutes of the last was back to full board. The board is concerned with staff's recommendation. No, the board concurred with staff's recommendation for a 1-year limited approval for the temporary structure and improvements on the site to include possible annual review for time extensions as requested by the applicant and a 3-year maximum approval time limit. Add a trellis element to the temporary structure and shown on the plans. Provide a color board. Provide the location of the air conditioning unit on the plans to be screened from public view. Provide the location of the trash facility on the plans to be screened from public view. Return with information of the proposed permeable paving material. Screen the temporary building from Milper Street with an additional planter. If fencing is used along the existing curb cut driveway, provide details on the plans. Landscaping at the front corner curb cut shall be included in the design. The board looks forward to a more sustainable year-round plant palette, not excluding trees, to be included as part of the proposed landscaping. Okay? Continue.
Okay, so I think we should look at the landscaping issues first, since that's the majority of the work that we're doing out here. Let's start with the paving. We have abandoned the idea of permeable asphalt. There were just too many questions about that, and we decided instead to just switch to regular asphalt and increase the size of our planters in treatment areas to deal with the runoff that would come off of plain old asphalt. So that's how we're addressing that issue. We in accordance with the board's recommendations, we got rid of the areas that were previously shown as driveways the last time we were in here. That allowed us to add a significant amount of planter area, which helps us to mitigate the runoff and basically covers up that paving at the corner, and it keeps access through the existing curb cuts on De La Guerra and Milpa Street that are further away from the corner. We showed the trash enclosure back in the back corner. That would be an enclosure, so it's screened. Also, the building screens it from view from Milpas. It's kind of tucked back in there. The air conditioning unit didn't make it onto this set of plans. I apologize for that, but we would certainly accept the condition that just says any air conditioning unit has to be located opposite Milpas Street. We can have those configured anyway, and we'll have it configured so it goes opposite Milpas Street. We got planters all the way around proposed. They're actually above ground planters. Again, it's just a temporary use here, and these would be planter boxes with screening vegetation in them. And that's pretty much it on the landscaping. We added a tree. I think Lane Gidkind changed the palette around a little bit. We also added a picture on here so you can see the existing site and kind of see the dilapidated condition that it's in that we're trying to improve. Our conundrum here is with elevation drawings of a mobile unit that's going to go on this site. What I provided today, and I apologize for this being late, but it is here. This is the exact mobile unit that is proposed to go on the site. It's kind of a grayish blue color with darker blue-gray trim and a skirt that goes down all the way to the ground. And we're having trouble grappling with the idea of having architectural drawings done of a mobile structure that's going to be out there for a couple of years. If we were just building something else on this site and we had a construction trailer that was going to be there for a few years, that wouldn't be subject to aesthetic review because it's going away in a few years. And so is this. We have a 3-year maximum time limit on this. And what we're asking is, rather than show a bunch of drawings of what it could look like, we're showing you pictures of it. That is the unit, and we obviously would look for any other recommendations on plantings we could put around it to screen it some more. But that's the actual unit that's proposed for the site. And again, the main things going on here are the site improvements and the landscaping, and I think Lane's done a really good job of illustrating all of that. So that's pretty much all I have, and I can answer any questions that you have.
Okay, thank you. Do we have no speaker slips? Bring it back to staff.
Yes, Mr. Chair. We have one letter of concern from Ms. Paula Westbury.
Thank you. Back to the board for questions. Keith.
So at this point, you're not proposing any specific kind of enhancements to the trailer other than what we see here?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Rivera, I think what we're looking for is clear direction on what you'd want us to do to this trailer, and then that goes into the minutes, and then we would do that.
And there's no specific parking layout or anything for the paved areas. Is that correct?
Mr. Rivera, no, there's not. This is going to be used for car sales, and they're going to just park them as efficiently as they can. Oh, but we have designated the parking spaces that meet our ordinance compliance in ADA, and those are where they're shown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks a lot. Gary?
Couple of questions. You were to add some trellises, and you were to add some planters to screen the building. And did you do that?
Mr. Mizell, we've shown the planters on the site plan. They're box trees or what's proposed.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have architectural elevations of the structure to depict trellises on, but we could certainly add trellises on the structure. I mean,
You just didn't.
We just didn't.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, and then
Gary?
were the fingers? Are you going to be adding any parking fingers on here for the parking spaces?
Parking fingers
for
your parking cars. It's a parking.
You have a complete asphalt. So are you going to have any in the where the parking area is?
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the term parking finger.
You're not.
Every 8 spaces, you're required to have a planting strip after the 8th car. Every 8 cars, you're required to have a planting strip. So if the whole lot's going to be a parking strip, a parking lot, then he's asking if you have accounted for that. And It doesn't look like you have.
I'll clarify that. I understand that requirement when you're designing a parking lot consistent with ordinance parking standards for like serving a commercial use. This is not that type of parking lot. This is nearly identical use to Milpas Motors that's directly across the street from us, where the entire asphalt area is basically occupied with vehicles for sale. So it's different than an operational parking lot. It's a car sales lot. And no, we're not proposing to stripe it and put in median plantings for a car sales lot.
Okay.
Don?
I'm having a hard time understanding the landscape plan and what these strips of yellow and dark green mean and where these plants go. Can you tell us?
Mr. Chair, I believe Lane is indicating different areas where differential plantings will occur within that planter strip.
I understand, but I'm not following the method of his representation. Can you? I'm not understanding what these strips mean.
Yeah.
Because there's no legend.
Yeah.
So do you know what? I mean, if this is a landscape plan, then to me it's just a drawing with a bunch of blue or green stripes on it. So
I think we need to add a legend. I think he meant to key them to these different varieties of plants, and he just didn't get the colors
that's
keyed
all. I
over.
don't have any more questions.
Thanks, Clay.
Mr. Chair, just one question for the applicant. On the landscape architect's drawings, detail 1 talks about rain garden vegetated filter. It's showing a dimension 15 feet to the center line. It says 15 feet minimum, see plan, and the plan says 15 feet. So are we doing 15 feet or 30 feet?
No, it's 15 feet total. The center line is just the center.
Oh, that's the entire dimension? Okay, got it. That was my question.
Okay. So back to the board for comments. Keith?
Well, I think as far as dressing up the trailer, I think we'd want to see you come back with a specific proposal for a trellis, and I'd like to see it, across the at a minimum across the long direction. I think also coming back with the legend for the landscape plan so we can evaluate that. And I realize it is being used as not kind of your typical parking lot, but I would like you to consider possibly having some sort of potted, boxed trees or something that could be strategically placed to kind of break up the expanse of the asphalt. I think there's some examples of that in the Goleta Cottage Hospital that's under construction right now. They have a temporary parking situation where they've done things along those lines. So I would look to see for some effort to try to break up the expanse of the asphalt. That's it, Mr. Chair.
Thanks a lot. Gary?
Yeah, I agree with those comments as well as the comments of where the trailer is located, how they indicate where the air conditioning unit is going to be, and how you plan on more than just facing the direction of the trailer, but also screening the device itself, and how you plan on doing that. Screening the trash enclosure. Right now you've got a dotted line out there. I would imagine that we'd want to see some fencing around that trash enclosure, and we'd want to see that.
Thanks, Gary. Dawn?
Yeah, Jared, I just think that you didn't really address any of the we did make specific comments, because you asked for what are your specific comments on how to screen this building, but we gave them to you last time, and you didn't show them or address them. So if it's a temporary structure and this is it, then I might be okay with not putting a big expensive trellis up front if it's only going to be here for 3 years, but then you haven't shown us what are the trees, what are the box trees, what do the boxes look like. You haven't given us enough to be able to determine if the trellis is still going to be required or if the the box trees are going to be sufficient to screen it. If you're trying to do that to save money, I would understand that. But you haven't given us enough information. So the same thing with, even though it's a temporary trash enclosure, we don't have a drawing of the trash enclosure. We also don't know, we do need to know how you're screening the air conditioning unit and where it's going to go. So all these same comments would still apply. But I, for one, would be open to the idea of not building a permanent trellis if the mitigating measures that you're proposing are sufficient. I would be okay with that, possibly. Like I said before, the landscaping needs to be detailed. It's not clear what's going on and where it's being proposed. And I guess I should just voice my concern that it doesn't seem like there's any, maybe there's not, maybe there is, but I don't know if there's any permit processing for putting a bunch of cars on a lot. So if it's going to end up being a 10-year car lot, then I would look at this project a little differently than I would if it was just temporary. So I'd look to staff for how they want us to look at the project, knowing now that it is going to be a car lot. So that's it for me.
Thanks. Clay?
Mr. Chair, I agree with everything that's been said. There's nothing more permanent than temporary building, so I'm hoping that there's some cutoff date on this project, because I don't remember us really ever approving one of these in town to be on a car lot. So, it's probably been a long time. Maybe the car place on Chapala was the last one. My regards about the trellis. I think putting a trellis on this building isn't going to help the building, unless it's done really well, and we don't have enough information to really evaluate that. So, I could go either way, but I definitely think the building needs to be screened. We need to have more information. We need to have a little bit more information on the landscape plan, and I would look to staff for some restriction on this, because I would hate to see them renew this every 3 years for the next 10 years or 12 years. So,
thanks, Clay. Mike?
Sure.
Yes.
Quick comment. The parking lot the auto sales itself is allowed under ordinance. And I think what I'm hearing you struggle with is the actual office to serve the auto sales. And, your board can look at, a timeline probably consistent with the current approval for the tentative map, which is 3 years. And then coming back with, if they want to continue on with that, come back with a more permanent type of office. But what I want to make clear is, under this current ordinance, a auto sales is allowed. And that's why we have to look at the parking area as is an outdoor sales type of thing. And that's why the finger planter wouldn't apply, because auto sales. It's only the area that's required by ordinance of 4 spaces that is required on the lot. Does that help?
It helps a little bit. One of the things I have to say about that is that if you come before us with a auto sales, permanent auto sales, I think that's one thing. If you come before us with a temporary auto sales, and then we also have a parking guidelines that we use in any other parking lot scenario, I think that we may look at it differently, and I think that that's the case that we have here. So I'm just going to roll into my comments. I agree with most of my board members. I think that the temporary structure that we see here is definitely something that has to be screened and screened properly. We do not have the information that we require to tell you exactly what we'd like you to do. And if we had it here, you probably would come away with a lot more information that would help you come back quickly. And since you don't have it, it may take you a little bit longer, but we hope that you'll hit it when you come back the next time. So when you come back the next time, you're going to need to have elevations. of all 4 sides. And you're going to have to come back with a full landscaping plan that shows where you have temporary landscaping, be it box landscaping, also showing where the species of plants are, the size that you're initially going to put in, and show a sustainable way that those plants can survive, and how they're going to screen the units, be it the air conditioning, the trash, the building ramp, etc. You're going to need to provide a color board. You're going to put the air conditioning unit on the site plan with screening. You have the location of the trash, and we look to see how that is also screened, at least from this side, because it looks like it will be screened from the building on that side. I don't think it has to tightly go to the parking guidelines, but we're not asking you here to dig up and put in a permanent parking finger, but the least that you can do is provide landscaping within the asphalted area, be it in movable box plants of significant size that would make a difference within the parking lot. And so we're looking to keep your costs down, but also be able to give some aesthetic quality back to the public for the amount of asphalt that you will now be imposing on the Milpa Street pathway. We would ask for, at least I would ask for a trellis on the elevation on the long side and screening from Milpa Street on the eastern side. And that could be done with box trees or tall shrubs. Again, a proper landscaping plan, a color board, and that's my comments. And so,
Mr. Chair, I'd be prepared to make a motion for an indefinite continuance back to the full board with the
you.
following comments: that we carry forward previous comments from the August 24th agenda, items 1, 3, 4, and 5. And then the second comment would be provide appropriate screening for the proposed structure. And the third comment would be return with a complete landscaping plan.
okay, that's it? Mm-hmm. Do we have a second?
Not yet.
No. So we're under discussion.
Do you want to take his question under discussion before we vote?
Okay.
Or not?
I'll take your comment, a very short comment, if you can. We're running behind.
My name is... Sorry, that's why I have Jared doing all the talking. My name is James Groh, and I'm with 803 North Mill Street Partners, LLC. Just real briefly, there's a couple things going on here. We have 3 years total on the lot. My opportunity with the used car dealer is the best deal we've gotten in this economy. It's for $4,000 a month. The estimated cost for doing this work is roughly $60,000. So that's 15 months. I get to keep it for another 21 months. And the used car dealer under the lease, it's a month-to-month lease, they're getting the mobile home. The temporary mobile home unit.
If I could just stop you there, the economics of it, we appreciate how hard it is. We're trying to be careful when we ask for anything of anyone, that we're not going overboard in terms of asking them something that's a lot more expensive than it needs to be. So we have already taken that into consideration, but we cannot make decisions that's purely based on your economic situation with the property.
My point is this, is that the economic hurdle right now is on the borderline. So what I have is I basically got a somewhat blighted lot that gets tagged, that's not asphalted, that I'm going to get a sum total of 36 months to improve. And every dollar of improvement I put in there, in 36 months I've got to take out. So it ends up, the problem, Chairman, is that it ends up being kind of a step function analysis, that either nothing happens or something happens, and we're trying to do our best to make something happen, make some basic improvement, put some economic activity into the site, into the neighborhood. And the next choice beyond this is nothing. Because at a certain point in time, which we're already very close to, it's like, okay, well, then we'll just let the land sit fallow. Occasionally get the, every 3 to 4 week call, hey, you've been tagged again. I mean, it's just, so
Chair.
that's just what happens.
I'm sorry.
When was the last time this project came here? August?
Exactly.
August. Okay, so,
but the
sir, I'm sorry. We got to stop because this project came here in August, and we're in April, and we asked for a list of items to be addressed, and they weren't.
Months.
And now
I'm
we're
not
here
disagreeing.
again.
I'm not disagreeing.
And it's delaying you, and your argument that we're delaying you is not founded.
I'm not trying to argue. I'm just pointing out. I'm
Mr.
just
Chair.
pointing out the fact that it's a temporary structure that gets
I think we
rented by
understand.
someone else.
I think we understand
We
the point you're
understood
trying
that
to
way
make.
back in August, too.
Yeah. Thanks.
And I'd just like to restate that we have a motion on the
Motion
table
before
in a
the board.
second, and that we're not oblivious to that, but we can't set a precedence. Every structure that comes in like this, we can't just approve it blindly. We can't look at individual applicants' economic situations.
And there's no, we have no way of putting value to an economic statement either. It's just not our purview. We don't have the information.
I just went through.
I know, but you should have been considering that in August.
Yeah.
Okay.
September, October, November, December, January, February, March.
Discussion about the motion.
Yeah, go ahead, Gary. On the
Back
discussion.
to business.
Yep.
Thanks. The discussion on the motion, the only thing that I wanted to add was the trailer, the orientation of the trailer, and that the handicap ramps and the trellis be indicated on the plans. Because what they're showing here in the picture is a double handicap ramp, which is wider, which means the trellis is going to be wider. Just indicate that.
So the correction or the addition of the note in the motion, Kathy, would be that if there is a handicap ramp proposed for this particular structure, it needs to show up on those plans as well.
Okay. So we have a motion on the table. Any more on discussion? No. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Against, motion carries. Thank you.
Just leave the lot the way it is. That's what it's going to be.
Yeah, unfortunately, that would
It's a bummer.
Yeah. Okay, item number 3, 3052 State Street. Pass that. Okay. So staff is going to make a quick comment before we start.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I'd just like to make a brief announcement to
Thank
the
you.
board and to the members of the public regarding this project, and want to remind them again that this project is before the board today for aesthetics only. The use is an allowed use in the commercial zone, and that this is the only discretionary review body heard, and it is again only for the aesthetics of the commercial alterations to the building. If the members of the public have any concern with the proposed use, that is not the purview of this board and needs to be directed to the ABC and or the police department. And again, transportation has reviewed this project and has found that there's no impacts to this proposed use at this intersection.
Okay, thanks very much. And I'm going to read the minutes just before we start. Back to full board, provide a revised landscape plan to accurately indicate existing material to remain, existing material to be removed, and proposed landscaping. Return with any proposal for additional parking lot lighting, including fixture cut sheets and photometrics. Study incorporating a pedestrian presence and entry from State Street. Study the parking configuration to be in compliance with city requirements for the number of tree wells, and study additional opportunities to introduce or retain additional landscaping materials. Study the configuration of the molding and tile details on the rear of the building to be consistent with the architecture. Study methods to screen the open trash enclosure from public view. Provide a color and materials board for any proposed changes. Okay?
My name's Eric. My name's Eric Marquardt. I'm the head of construction for Beverages and More. I have Tom Baranek, who's the superintendent for general contractor Terra Nova, Don Inaba from Hayashida Architects, and Roger
Dutron,
who's the
landscape architect.
So with that, Don does have responses and can walk you through
If I may,
each of these points.
I'm Don Inaba with Hayashida Architects, and we could go through these motions item by item. First of all, the revised landscape showing proposed and new landscape is shown on L1 and L2. L1 is the landscape demolition plan showing what is to be demolished and what is to remain, and landscape L2 is the landscape plan showing the proposed landscape with landscape materials. Should you want to do these one at a time?
The only tree you're removing is this one right here?
And
Yes.
here, because we added a walkway to address item number 3.
So you removed one here and you're putting another one back?
Yes.
Is that it?
And we, after we looked at the site, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but we decided to retain the existing landscape to be in compliance with the city ordinance. The landscape planter is in disrepair, so we will provide a new landscape, but the tree that's there will remain. And we did retain the other tree that was proposed to be removed also.
Okay.
Item 2. Presently, there are no parking lot lights in the parking lot. There are only a wall-mounted fixture on the building, and we propose to add one light over the man door and one light over the new entry door. That light is going to be mounted just above the door, about 8 feet, and it's a wedge-shaped light where it shines downward, so we don't see any light bleeding onto the existing neighborhood residential. Item 3, incorporate a presence from State Street. As you saw in the landscape plan, we plan to add a new sidewalk along the side of the building that will connect with State Street.
How wide is that sidewalk?
Presently 5 feet.
5 feet.
Item 4, I think we talked about study the parking configuration to be in accordance with city standards, so we retain the existing finger planter that's in the parking lot to have no more than 8 stalls, and we kept this planter with the palm tree up in front as well. Thanks. Item 5, study the configuration of the molding to be consistent with the rest of the building. And the tile detail. We added the detail that's presently at the building, and that will be on the new portion of the rear elevation, which are these two. And I apologize for the confusion last time. The other lines that were there should not have been shown. It's a long story. Item 6, study methods to screen the trash enclosure from public view. We added metal gates, which will be painted to match the building. In item 7, provided color materials board. I believe I set that down. Oh,
One more page back.
oh,
I think it should be the next page, Don.
okay. Oh, okay. Now, if you were to just kind of look at the building, you think there's only two colors, the building and the accent at the bottom. But as we looked at the photographs closer, it looked like there's a little bit of a wash to the building. There's a base color, and there's a little bit of wash that gets mixed in with the paint, and we can't really get that correctly. So these were the two colors that we saw, and Tom has said that his painter can go to the site and mix it. But these were
correct. If I may interject, the intent is the portion of just part of the building will be repainted to match existing, and it is kind of a antiqued looking
kind of Spanish
paint.
style.
And so our determination is going to be just to on-site match what is there, and it's just going to have to be a custom mix on-site.
And that's this color too is there? on site?
That's a solid color.
That's there now?
Yeah, that's there.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay, I just return it to staff. Oh.
Yes, just one letter of concern from Miss Paula Westbury, and then we also had one phone call from an adjacent neighbor, and was Barbara Walsh, and was concerned with traffic and noise.
Okay, thank you. I bring it back to the board for questions. Keith? Oh, yeah. No, public comment. Sorry. Let me just take these first. I missed that. So we have 3 for public comment, 3 speakers. Camille Scott will be followed by Eric Scott, will be followed by John Reynolds. So if... You can stay. Yeah. You just need one seat. You can stay.
I'm sorry, I did not fill out a speaker slip, but I'm representing the Scots here. Just to want to voice some concerns that we have regarding traffic and noise issues that we understand is not within your purview, this board's purview, but you're the only reviewing body in this project. So we would just like to have the chance to have their concerns be put on the record.
Okay. And would they like to say what their concerns are?
Yeah, briefly.
Okay, go right ahead.
Oh, and here's a letter that is submitted for a few other signatures.
Okay.
Everybody, you have 2 minutes.
Yeah. Go ahead.
My name is Eric Scott, and I'm a Kaya Nagara resident. And I'm a little concerned with trucks, where they're going to be unloading and loading and stuff like that. I know that I took this picture today. The store's not even open yet, and that was at noon. That's a fairly slow time of the day, and it's fairly tight, and that's the same entrance right there near the school. So I just wanted to I have some concerns about the vehicles and extra traffic, and five or six cars typically line up there. It's pretty tight, So that's basically what I wanted to say. And safety of the school and stuff.
Okay.
And McKenzie Park.
Right.
I live on the 3000 block of Kaya Nogara. This is my husband, and we have 2 children. And when I hear aesthetics, one thing that concerns me is we already have had to call the police on drunk adult men in the neighborhood on Peabody Elementary School property. Last summer, and this to me this is aesthetics. And last summer, my children went to the school to play and came home. Mommy, there's a man sleeping in the breezeway of the school, and so he wasn't sleeping. And aesthetics, to me also means traffic in the alley. if you are trying to drive a car through there and there's a delivery truck, it is extremely tight. And the business that was there before was a furniture store. This seems like it would have increased traffic. I realize that's not your area, and I apologize. But it concerns me that there would be more pollution, noise, and traffic.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And this is John Reynolds.
John Reynolds. I live directly behind the building to be, and I agree with everything Camille has said. But so many of the trucks all have that loud beep, beep, beep noise as they back in. And I know that when wine services a store, there's not one wine vendor or two. There's a dozen small ones from all over California that come in. And I think it's going to change the neighborhood, and it will really sound commercial from my backyard, in addition to the building being torn down. So now my wonderful sound barrier is going to be gone for the parking places. But it's going to greatly change my backyard.
Okay.
For the worst.
You understand? And it's just through a view, I mean, I think you all have valid concerns, and while this body is not the one to address or be able to take action on those concerns, I encourage you to get the list from Michelle, and when hearings are had at those bodies that you present your case.
Perhaps my question is, will the trucks be unloading in the alley? Will they be stopped in the alley, or will they actually have a,
We actually don't know. Right. We don't know.
Okay.
And
typically that alleyway, I've watched it for so many years, and it is a small alleyway. So like the pet store, for instance, when he unloads, he has nowhere to pull off. He just blocks the road for that time being.
Right.
And it's the way it's always been, and everybody kind of knows if you're in there, you got to back up to get out.
Right.
But with the added deliveries, it may just congest it permanently.
Understand.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Okay, I'd like to then bring it back to the board for questions. Keith?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I can just interject just one moment, just to remind again the public that this is not going to any other discretionary review. This is only at the ABR. And also, just to give you a mindset that the ABR can put a condition of approval on hours of operation for loading and traffic for that use. They did that for Trader Joe's on De La Vina, so that is something that you can put as a condition.
ABR?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we're getting more into the environmental impact.
Okay, questions? Keith?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is for staff. Is this facility of the size that per ordinance requires an on-site loading zone or loading space?
That would be more typically addressed by, that's not a zoning issue, that would be a building and safety, and they have not gone to building and plan check. They have to get ABR approval first, but we have had this routed to building safety and transportation. They've had cursory reviews of it, and that has not arisen as an issue.
I was under the impression that over a certain square footage size that an on-site loading space was required, but okay, thank you.
Maybe building required.
Question to the applicant. On the south
Elevation in this kind of end portion here, isn't there an existing opening?
No. It's a window.
Yeah, an existing opening, right? Okay. So, was that considered at all to be used to create a entry facing State Street?
It was two things. In the type of business we have, we try to limit the entrance into the building to one entry just because of the potential for theft and being able to control the entry into our stores and whatnot. So that's why it's decided to create the walkway from State Street to the one entrance.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Keith. Gary?
I'll save mine for comments.
Thanks. Dawn? Paul?
Question have, if we can go to the site plan.
the proposed site plan. It has to do about the overall width of the parking. I realize that this is existing, and currently this is a landscape area, and I just want to make sure ADA-wise that there's enough room for your 44 inches or whatever path of travel from where the bumper is, and so you've worked that out, so there's enough room. Okay. And then, okay. And then the second comment I had was on the awning. Do you have a larger drawing of this proposed awning over there?
Not presently.
Okay. And that's all I have for my comments.
Okay. Thanks, Clay. Just one or two minor questions. I'm looking at maybe south here.
Yes.
South elevation, and this parapet detail has what looks like a reddish colored stripe through it. And then as that returns around this side, that goes away and this turns to a dark color up there.
I don't believe that reddish color should be there.
So my question is, if we're talking about colors, what's the plan? Where are we going? Because that's different than that, and then the back part of the building is also different from the other two. So I'm not clear what the intention is.
I think what happened was some of in this case, some of the shadowing got in the way. The idea is just to have it all the same color as it presently exists. I don't think that red color should be there. Again, I have to, and that should not be there.
Okay. My question is, this blue color here, are you replacing the glazing that's there now?
No, that's...
So that's to remain?
Yeah, the glazing is to remain.
Okay, and I think Keith talked about it. Keith said...
There is a window there.
So that will remain?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Straight into comments. Keith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I'm glad to see that you've retained some of the existing landscaping so that it's more in compliance with the landscape requirements for parking areas. I think my biggest comment is I think not utilizing this opening here to create a direct connection from State Street is a real lost opportunity, and in so doing we're removing landscaping in that front area. So I would have liked to have seen this opening used to create an entry on State Street. Those are my comments, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Keith.
Gary?
Some comments very similar along the same line. I'm not in favor of putting a new sidewalk where existing landscaping is working very well in front of the fenestration, and I wouldn't be in favor of putting a new sidewalk there and losing 100% of landscaping there. Again, with the entry, we want to create neighborhood friendliness. We want to create a walking environment, a door in the front of State Street that adds character to the building, that adds to the building rather than parking lot driven or motorist oriented shopping. We want to have a type of area where it's a neighborhood, it's a walking neighborhood, and we want to have an entrance to the front. And we talked about this last time, and I don't think my concerns have changed from there. As far as the lighting fixture goes, I would like to see a lighting fixture that's similar to the ones that are on the existing front of the building right here, and something that is more in character with the building that's there. So I personally don't think that this is the right fixture for that building.
Okay, Gary, thanks. Dawn?
I'm okay with the walkway going to the rear of the building. I think that we asked the applicant to do whatever they could to provide an access for pedestrians, and I think that, and I understand completely wanting one entrance and exit to this building for security reasons, and that they've they've done what they can do. I think the main entry should be where it is based on the design of the architecture. I think the main entrance should be back there, unless you want to change the whole building, which I think is a lot to ask of the applicant. So I'm understanding that request from them, as long as, I don't know if you are going to get your 44 inches or whatever it is that's required by ADA, because I think cars overhang 24. So unless it's 36, it's required. I wish it were wider, and the other reason I wish it were a little wider is so that you could get some vine pockets or something to grow some landscaping up on that wall. If you have the ability to with your backup dimensional requirements, and that would help mitigate the landscaping that you're losing there. I think there's a lot of landscaping, there's a lot of trees, they're mature trees, so that's a concession that I'm willing to consider, and I like the pedestrian access from State Street. I do like that. I think that to try to match that old faux finish is maybe something I wouldn't do, because that building has been tagged in the past, and I think that you would be better off being able to fix a tagging if it's a solid color. I think it's going to be really high maintenance to try to recreate that faux finish every time the building gets tagged. Graffitied. Yeah, so I think that the solid color would be my preference in the lighter tone, and not try to do the faux finish at all. And I do think that this property is going to get a lot more traffic than the furniture store did, and that's just the nature of retail. Some businesses are more busy than other ones, and I would suggest that the property owners start planting on the back sides of their backyards at this point, because unfortunately they live, right behind where trucks are going to be unloading. So that would be one thing they could do, and I also would support making restrictions on delivery times on this project. Definitely. That's it for me.
Thanks, Dawn. Paul?
I'm actually going to concur with Dawn on the walkway versus the other two board members, just because we did ask you for that. So having a sidewalk tied against the building, I don't think there's going to be vine pockets would be necessary, just because the architecture is interesting here. It would be nice to narrow up that driveway width a little bit and move that bumper out, because when the big Lincoln Continental hits his tires, hit the bumper, he sticks out, and then would you have the 44 inches is the consideration. 48. 88. Yeah. So move the bumper forward a little bit more to make sure that that's a nice walkway. The architecture is interesting here because of the windows. Retaining this for a future door, for a future business, perhaps would be a good idea, or let's at least keep it as a window into your shop. The concern I had, which is out of our purview, but I still like talking about it anyways, if we can go to the site plan or the floor plan, and it has to do with this this wall right here. And I saw on the plans that it's a 60-inch high wall, and I don't know what the purpose is, but it extends beyond this window. And so the concern I have is it'd be nice if you had this as views in here. I don't know what you're going to put here, but if we're going to encourage people to walk this way, and if we even had a window that was here, you can have a lot of in and out kind of space, and if you can move this somewhere else. But by the way you have this delineated, it sort of says that you're just going to black out these windows and turn your back on it, but then this becomes a hard edge, and it's just, to me, that's more of a lost opportunity than losing this door, because I understand the logistics of security and path of travel. So I'm curious. My aesthetic review is how your building relates to the pedestrians walking to your store. If they're parking here, they walk up to the sidewalk and they walk in the door. So that was a concern, even though it's an interior element. The last item having to do with the awning, it's on the black and white version, it seems a little bit small, diminutive, and sometimes the awnings are raised up higher even though the door stops here, and you show more of the awning just for look, and it's because the building is so tall that I think you need a little more substantial awningness. So that's just my take, and then the color needs to be shown on the plans, and then whatever wrought iron bracket and all that kind of foo-foo. And you can do another one over here just to add some color, a splash of color. So that's my take. I'm glad you saved the trees in the landscaping area. We didn't talk about the new sidewalks, but it could be colored concrete because that's what they had before. Unfortunately, I also agree with Dawn on the tagging and going with the mottled color because usually that's put on with a sponge or it's washed on. And having a solid body color is going to be easier to repaint. But maybe the hardscape that you have can still have a little colored concrete broken up with a pattern to make it interesting as people walk to your front door.
Thanks, Clay. Mr. Chair, thank you. My only couple comments are, I think awning details, trash enclosure details are important. What we're adding to the building. I'm really nervous of this project turning just related to colors. I agree with Dawn and Paul in terms of solid color. I'm nervous of this building turning into a big taupe box, like the McDonald's on Milpas just redid itself. And so I'm not really supportive of the color palette that's chosen at this point. I'd like to see another option, perhaps, and in that should include the awning colors and whatnot. I'm pretty much in agreement with the walkway from State Street that goes to the current entry. I think the light fixtures should be different than what you're proposing, more along the lines of what Gary was talking about. And I definitely appreciate the fact that you've studied the landscape plan and incorporated some of the existing trees in the finger planters. Thanks, Clay.
I forgot one item, and that had to do with the height of this wainscoting. And there's no reason why it has to be the same on all four elevations. That this one element that has the taller, you could pick this wainscoting up a little bit, or this wainscot up a smidgen, or even more, whatever. You can play with those heights because it looks almost insignificant back here. And it's just another opportunity if you go starting to study the colors.
Okay, thanks. I have similar comments. I think the first is that the landscaping, I would like our landscape architect to have a review of it, so that really should come back to be reviewed with the landscape architect. I don't think that, our comments here on the landscape architect need to be added to hers. And so we would not be able to give you the final landscape architectural input at this time. But I think what you've heard from the other members is certainly important. I also think that the light fixture should be a different style. I agree with the others on the faux color and the solid color. I think actually the faux color that's there right now is a very... not only is it hard to be able to repair under graffiti, but it's also, I think it's a very dull color that's up there. So I would like to see another color option and a full color board that shows us all the awning colors, etc. That Clay was talking about. I think Clay was saying that he's looking for the is it the details of the gates, the trash enclosure gates and stuff like that? We would like to see those. I think that I'm on the side more with Keith. I think that the loss of an entry that's closer to State Street is really, that's a big lost opportunity. And I say that more because of the type of business that you're trying to run. Because I think that when you carry all of your customers down, halfway down, you have the potential of now having carry over from your business get closer and closer to the neighborhood, the residential neighborhood. And a lot of the businesses that are along State Street, where you have commercial in front onto the street and you have residential behind, really a lot of them are serviced from the front mainly. I think a lot of them on this part of State Street do have a back alley and they do have parking in the back, but I just think it's a lost opportunity to be able to carry a lot of that trade out back onto State Street as opposed to coming out midway down your lot and possibly having greater impact than it might necessarily have by being halfway down. So I think that that's something I would have liked to have seen in the proposal. I am for having a restriction on the loading time. Let's see. I certainly would like to see the window back included into here. Let's see. And if you're taking that tree out, that's am I right that that's the tree that you're taking out in the center?
Bioretention for the site
and
being incorporated into the existing land.
So the tree that you're putting back is it would, when you come back with your to see before the landscape architect, is the size and nature of the tree that you're putting back there, because that's a significant green amenity. And 36-inch box tree. Okay, that's a pretty significant size. Okay.
Yes?
Oh, well, you're done with your comments. I'm prepared to make a motion.
And I am done.
Before you make a motion, can I ask staff a question? Could we ask staff to prepare hours of operation for the loading and unloading similar to other projects?
Yeah, I'm sure that can be prepared as a standard condition of approval.
Just to let you know, the PCN that is granted to us by the police department does have hours of receiving written into it.
I was going to propose that they propose to us what, that was going to be part of my motion. That's okay. But that's how I was going to deal with it. I was going to say have them return and then tell us what they want, and then we can comment on it. So you don't have to find it right now.
Okay.
Because we're running late, so I wanted to try to speed things up.
So we should get in minutes anyway, so that we can attend to it.
Get the what?
That restrictions on loading. Once it's a line item in the minutes, we attend to it.
For them to propose it was what I was going to say when they come in.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Can I just interject real quick and just read, for the record, a memo from Stephen Foley, our transportation planning supervisor. He had some comments. One was a pedestrian path of travel from State Street is proposed. His comments include the wheel stops must be placed in the parking stalls so that the face of the stop is 1.25 feet from the sidewalk, that this will maintain the minimum 4-foot pedestrian travelway even with a parked city standard vehicles overhang. And he's advising the applicant can contact the Building and Safety Division staff. Pedestrian path of travel requirements. 2, a minimum of 5 bicycle parking spaces are required, 1 space per 7 vehicles to accommodate both employees and patrons, and employee spaces should be covered and secured.
Covered?
Bicycle parking for employees.
Needs to be covered.
Could you
Yes.
hold off on that one point?
Yeah, it's
Your
here.
point, bicycle parking is covered for the
It is. There's the site plan. And here's the.
For 5 spaces?
Yes, 5 spaces.
So it's right, can you draw in where the bikes would go? Can you, they go in front of the door then? And they'd block the door?
Not really. The door is here.
We'll come up with a comment about this.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I could just continue with this particular comment. It says, Steve Foley says that the vehicle parking appears to be overparked by 1 space and may be reduced if necessary to provide bike parking area, and they are overparked by a space. So
But it would have to be covered.
The bicycle parking, not vehicle parking, but yes. Transportation code. And then 3, and just carry on. Landscaping and planters in front of vehicles shall be ground cover so that maneuvering bay depth is not compromised. 4, landscaping at entrance shall also be low growing so that it does not impair exiting sight distance. And 5, access to the alley shall remain open during business hours.
Okay. Thanks. So you want to continue with your...
Yeah, I wanted to make a motion, and then the one comment I wanted to make about your comment about feeling that there was a major loss of not having the door closer to State Street was...
or a door.
an entrance closer to
An
State
entrance,
Street,
yeah.
right here was what you were saying, I think.
Oh, yeah, closer. Yeah.
Is that the other reason I'm okay with it is because I think that this is a business that's primarily being visited by vehicles that a lot of people aren't going to be walking to buy one beer or a bottle of liquor. And I think that if you do introduce an entrance and showcase alcohol at the front, you're even asking for people to do that more, and I don't think that's what this neighborhood wants. I think that they probably want people to drive here, make their purchases, and leave, instead of a neighborhood liquor store that you can walk up to. So that's the other reason that I'm okay with that entrance being back there. So that's why my motion is going to be in favor of everything that they've done, and I think that the small items that they are, that we still have issues with are minor in nature, and that's why I'm prepared to make a motion for preliminary approval with a bunch of comments, with a bunch of, a laundry list of little details. So we'll see how this goes. It may not go anywhere, but my motion would be, for one, provide an appropriate color for the exterior of the building, preferably one lighter than that being proposed, and a solid color, as opposed to a faux finish. The second item would be to confirm adequate width for the proposed sidewalk per Transportation Department recommendations. Number 3 would be provide details and proposed color for the awning. 4, provide trash enclosure details. 5, return with a more appropriate light fixture that, how do I say this? It's more, that matches the existing architecture. Number 6, confirm and indicate on the plans the height of the wainscot on all elevations. Number 7, return with a proposal for restricted delivery times for review by the board. Number 8, show the existing window on the south elevation. Number 9, specify the species and the size of the proposed tree at the left of the entrance. And number 10, resolve an appropriate location for the proposed 5 bicycle parking spaces that does not interfere with the entrance.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second that. And I have 2 comments. The first one is on number 9, in which Dawn makes reference to the tree at the left to show the box size. Instead, can we just say that that all comments about landscaping are withheld until the landscape architect can review? Because our preliminary approval is for architecture only and not landscaping.
We can just state, that the preliminary approvals for architecture only and landscape will be reviewed at the next meeting.
Right.
Confirmation of the landscape.
And then the second comment I want to make is you make reference to the window. You said show the window on this elevation facing state. Is it to remain or is it show it to be removed?
Just show it to remain.
Show it to remain.
We may have a problem with this.
Yeah.
Under discussion, I had 2 things. You mentioned one of the transportation's items. Would it be wise for us to say that we'd like to incorporate all of transportation's recommendations?
Yes.
So that.
But that was a given.
Okay.
They're going to have to, they have to address all those anyway.
Okay, and then the other one was is that I would like the applicants to return with accurate renderings that show if they bring color drawings that the colors are accurate and there's not like red at the top versus shadow and we don't know what it is. So if you come back with accurate elevations in the documentation, because if you go further, they'll become record. Thanks.
Mr. Chair.
Gary.
The only comment I have about preliminary on architecture is if in fact that the sidewalk doesn't work.
The ADA-ness of it?
The ADA-ness of the sidewalk does not work.
It's not our purview.
Well, it is, because what we're doing was we're saying that this area of the sidewalk is okay for mitigating traffic from State Street. So then we're coming back and all of a sudden this isn't okay, ADA-wise, then we haven't mitigated the entry from State Street, and therefore the architecture is not okay.
That's why I wrote, that's my, one of my comments was to show that it works.
So therefore preliminary wouldn't be, I won't be able to support preliminary just based on that one item.
I just asked that it worked, and I wouldn't want to hold up preliminary if they can make it work. If they can't, then they can't make it work. But he said it works, so I'm taking his word for it.
Well, I'm quoting from, I'm taking it from the traffic engineer who asked us to provide the wheel stops a foot 3 inches or 1.25 feet from the sidewalk to make sure it works.
What about the slope of the sidewalk?
Yeah, it's flat. It's flat.
I think that what he's saying then, Gary, is it sounds like the wheel stops are right now graphically shown too close to the sidewalk, and Transportation's asked him to pull those back so that the sidewalk does work. Is that correct, Keith?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Discussion.
And discussion.
Just scaling the drawing, which is always a danger, but my understanding is you need an 18-foot parking space, and then you need a 48-inch ADA path for a total of 22 feet, and it scales at 21. So I think we can just
I think he needs to make sure that he has these
per
long
the
enough.
motion, confirm the all that works. But if it doesn't work, then it's obviously going to affect the site plan.
Okay, so
You get that?
are you saying that?
He had to make stall.
Are you saying approval is contingent on that? Oh.
Well, it's that's why I stated, that's why it was very specific in my motion that there was an item that said, I think it was number 2, confirm adequate sidewalk width. That's a condition, that's a statement that, and we could state in there that if adequate sidewalk width is not obtainable, then the applicant doesn't have an approved project. I don't know. How do we state that?
Contingent?
Unless he's got a problem with the overall W dimension, which is the overall back-to-back 90-degree parking dimension, then he could easily add 1 foot to his 17-foot stripe that he's got drawn right now.
Mr.
I don't
Chair?
know. I'm not seeing this as a
Let me
big...
just state for the board that Transportation did look at this. Maybe one way the board can just make a comment to state that they do confirm before they come back with Building and Safety that ADA is resolved and works, because Transportation doesn't look at ADA, Building and Safety looks at ADA. So Transportation is given it the green light with these conditions, but you need to work out the ADA with Building and Safety.
Maybe we could restate item number 2 to state that the preliminary approval is contingent upon confirmation that the backup and the sidewalk width are adequate.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a little more stronger language.
Okay, we have a motion. All those in favor of the motion as read? Are you okay, Dawn?
Yeah.
To go ahead with the vote? All those in favor of the motion as read, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Against? 3.
I guess my language wasn't strong enough to get more votes.
No, I want the entrance.
Oh, you want the entrance on State Street? Okay.
Preliminary approval.
Motion carries.
Exact same reason. And they cited security reasons too. Yeah, we still said they had to have both exits. So
I stated why I made that motion. You didn't have to vote for it.
I didn't.
I know.
I'm just saying.
I don't think they want to welcome people like Milton Street does. I think
You're not being.
people aren't eating ice cream in this facility.
Okay, item number 3, 31 South Salina Street. Okay, we're 1.5 hours behind.
Right on time.
Give good service.
Absolutely. Without a doubt.
We're a half hour behind.
Is it? Half hour behind. So only because I.
These are the same. Should I dare roll them out, or do you want to use those? Or these are the same, or yeah. Okay.
Okay, if you could speak in do we have some minutes? Brand new project.
Brand new.
Project.
Brand new. My name is Jason Grant with J. Grant Design Studio.
Go ahead. Keep going.
Okay. We are located here on the corner of Salinas and Carpinteria Street. So on your way going down Salinas and then Carpinteria Cross Street right here. Here we are located on our site. We have an existing front building as seen from Salinas Street, which we aren't going to alter whatsoever. We'll leave that as it is. Behind this building, as we work our way up Carpinteria, there's an existing, what was obviously originally a garage. It's now used as storage. It's kind of a substandard little structure with some odd little appendages on it, and it's sitting right on property line. And so we're going to get rid of that structure, demolish it completely, and then propose a new two-car garage with a small studio up above, which will comply, obviously, with all our setbacks and solar and whatnot. So our existing site plan looks like this. There's this existing house, Carpinteria Street here. That that garage structure which sits back here. The curb cut is here, and they basically come right in here and park in this location. We will eliminate that structure, and we will propose a new two-car garage. We're blessed not only with double front yard setbacks, but double solar requirements, and so we have every restriction in the book we can have. So what we're doing is two new covered spaces, one additional for the studio that'll be above. The existing concrete, which is here, we'll remove that and put in permeable paving of some kind that we'll come through with later. We'll be widening out our existing drive. It's about 10 feet wide now, and we'll widen it out to about 16. Doing our best to keep it as diminutive as possible, but still make transportation happy. We're not interested in making a huge, large parking area, but we need to give ourselves some access there. Here's, as seen, it's kind of a street elevation from Carpinteria, existing building in the front, our new proposed structure in the back, simple garage, some storage, a laundry area down below, studio up above, a little kitchenette, and a little balcony. And then our elevations, once again, existing structure. This has kind of a nice little tile cap detail. We're not doing a flat roof, but we're going to pick up some of the same detailing, which is in the little house that's there, and then have a walkway which will carry you up to the studio up above. And that is the presentation. That's our wish list. happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. I'll bring back to staff.
Yes, Mr. Chair, a letter of concern from Ms. Paula Westbury.
Okay, thanks. Questions on the board? Keith? No questions. Gary?
No questions.
One?
Just one. You're allowed to park in the interior yard setback?
Yes, by the 3 feet.
By the 3 feet?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
That's it?
Well, great. Comment from the board? Keith?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this is a nicely done little project. I like the way you've preserved the front house to keep the scale and character existing at the street. So I think, in my mind, this would be ready for preliminary approval. My only comments would be maybe study some eave or overhang maneuver up at the studio entry just to provide some cover for rain and perhaps just architecturally, this is super minor, how this stair kind of works, whether you want it to be that cantilever or not, but again, that's pretty much interior to the property, so it's pretty minor. So those are my comments.
Thanks, Keith. Gary?
I too think it's ready for preliminary. The heights are minimum 8-foot plates is nice. The only thing that strikes me is the number of lighting fixtures that we have on the exterior of the building. Perhaps we could reduce that number to just the amount required. That's it.
Thanks. Don?
Let's see. I guess I just discovered I had a question. Where am I looking at here?
It's the laundry room and the mechanical area.
But
That's the
cantilever.
And it's the stairs.
Of the stairs.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I guess my only comment is that I think it's really nice, and the only thing I would look at is this railing going all the way down, and then that little strip of plaster there. It just, because it's plaster, and then because you're cantilevering, that strip seems a little thin, and I would maybe consider bringing that up and doing, for also a little privacy for here, maybe bringing that plaster up so that it has more of a solid cantilever feel there. That's it.
Paul?
I think it's ready for preliminary. It's a very great project. Minor little comment tweak. I don't know if you can make this wider, like either 6 or 2 2x4s, make it 8 inches, and then make this a little bit larger, more 1920 style, because this was your required open yard or whatever it was. But it would be nicer if this was wider visually.
Right.
And Keith had a great comment about something over the front door.
Right.
But it's a beautiful project.
Okay, Clay? And I think everybody else's comments covered it for me. I think it's a handsome project. I assume this is a 2-piece.
Yes.
Kyle? And I think you're good, ready to go. So I'd be open to a motion.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Keith?
I'll take a stab at it.
Yep.
This is for preliminary approval, final on consent, with the following comments. Consider increasing the plaster band below the balcony railing. Consider providing some sort of overhead cover at the studio entry, and study the number and placement of the proposed light fixtures, exterior light fixtures.
Thanks. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, Keith?
With with one comment that
on the discussion.
did we want to put the comment that somebody made about the width of the railing as you go up the stairs, it being increased slightly?
I was thinking of the width of the handrail portion.
That's what
not the actual.
Yeah, I know that's what you meant. That
Nothing wrong with that.
it's
his choice.
yeah, okay. Then I'm okay with the motion. I'm seconding it.
It's a good comment. We'll do it.
Yeah.
I had another comment. Should we put something in the motion about landscaping, that this was preliminary for architecture? and that landscaping would be at consent.
I think that's a good idea. What do you
Yeah.
think, Keith?
That sounds good. Okay, all those in favor of the motion as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're 6 minutes ahead of schedule. And item number 4, 525 East Micheltorena Street. Yeah, take off. Okay. Thanks, Clay. What?
Hopefully.
T-Mobile? Ooh. Better be good. Okay, if you could state your name and...
Yes, good evening. My name is Scott Dunaway, representing T-Mobile tonight. We have a project before you on 525 East Micheltorena Street. It's a 3-story office building, which we are proposing to add 2 additional faux chimney elements to it. There are already two Sprint faux chimneys on it, so we would be... These are existing here. We would be mimicking those on the opposite corners where there are not chimneys.
So you have
on the
2
project.
diagonally, and
would
then
have-
you're opposing 2 more on the other diagonal.
Correct.
To complete the 4 square.
Correct. We also are proposing cabinet equipment, and that would be on the 3rd floor, right below the rooftop, which we would just come straight through the roof and run our cabling to these 2 additional chimneys. So again, here are 2 existing Sprint on the corners. We would just be mimicking them on the other corners as well. They are 4 feet by 4 feet wide and 5 feet tall. And this proposal would have 4 antennas in it, and this one would have 3 for the coverage. And then here is the 3rd floor location that would house our equipment within it.
And the top of this is lower than the parapet?
Yeah, this is actually on the 3rd floor within the building.
And so the roof is much higher, that's what you're saying?
Yeah, we're on the
In
3rd
the
floor,
section?
and then the roof above that.
Section?
We would be in an
It's
existing
down,
suite.
it's down there.
Yeah, it's
I
it's
see.
an existing suite on the
Okay.
3rd.
All right. Staff, any public?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. One letter of concern from Ms. Paula Westbury.
Thanks very much. Keith, questions?
The new elements would match the existing kind of faux chimney elements.
We would match what Sprint has done up there. It's a faux stucco.
But as far
finish.
as size and
Size, they would
proportion and
replicate the same size that is up there currently.
fake.
Gary? John?
The photo simulation is different than the proposal in that in the drawings, you're proposing to cut away the eave, and on the photo sim you didn't cut away the eave, which is the proposal.
We are going to cut away the
You're going to cut away the eave. Did you? And then my second question is, did you put the chimneys on the opposing corners of the existing ones because you thought it looked better, or because that's the only place they could go? Did you look at putting them in the roof of the existing building somewhere somehow?
We put them on the corners just so we wouldn't get a shadowing effect from the roof line. When you put them there's a parapet here, so we would be up on this way. We're only 1.5 feet above the roof line. If we were to put them back here, we would have to go up higher to get the signal out. So
Okay.
that's why we did that, trying to minimize the height.
The height, okay. All right.
Paul? No comments?
No questions.
No questions? Comments? Keith?
Seems like a fairly innocuous addition in my mind. Given the scale of the existing building, I think the 4 chimney elements make architectural sense as much as anything else.
Gary?
My only comment is I'd like to see in the documents the same detailing that they have that I'm getting on the photographs, where the molding is OG'd and it's rather square on these, and I'd like to see the same details that are in the photographs replicated on the plan. The other thing that I want to make sure that we get is when this, I'm imagining this is going to go to consent, if we can get a sample of what that material is going to be like, because we've been getting some product that is not portrayed as well as the on site as it's been on the document. So I would say that we'd want to see an actual chunk of product what it looks like.
John?
No comment.
Paul? Okay, I have a comment. I'm probably a little bit different from the rest of the board, but given the scale of this building, I have to say that I am not in favor of it. I will not be able to support this. I think that the building is so big, and the addition of the elements to me start to change the character of the building, and I think it's going to happen more and more, and I am just opposed to the way it's how it changes this building. I think it loses its character a bit, and the building being so tall, I think it's the wrong direction, and I would have preferred to see a different proposal that would not make it that way. So that's my comment. So do we have anyone who would like to make a motion? Oh, Paul, you had a question for staff?
Oh, no, I was going to comment on your comment about 30 years from now, we're going to be having these fake cell phone tower parapets and turrets on our architecture, just like we have fake chimneys and fake towers to mimic the architecture of the 1800s.
Yeah, this town will be the most turreted and chimneyed town you could imagine if we keep on going this way. And, to start, like this building. Anyway, I don't. So that's where I am. So go ahead. Anybody? You want to make a motion? Anybody?
Well, my thing's on. I'll make a motion.
Yep.
I make a motion that we give it the project preliminary on the basis for working drawings. The applicant is to return with details of the proposed chimney, to give the details of the molding, as well as dimensions for the chimney to be indicated on the plan. Also notes to match existing. The applicant is also to come back to consent with product samples of the fake, I should say, faux plaster finish. That is going to be fiberglass, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay, do I have a second? Second by Keith. Under discussion? No? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Against? 1. Okay, motion carries. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
And with that, that concludes our agenda for the evening. Good night, Santa Barbara.
You make me feel so young. You make me feel there are songs to be sung, bells to be rung, and a wonderful fling to be flung.